Hello, welcome to our 6 p.m. workshop. We will be starting off with a presentation from the Mayoral Ad Hoc Committee on Substance Use and Recovery. And it will be myself, Councilor Jelinas, and CEO Ryder. So we're going to make our way down. Members of the Lewiston City Council, thank you for having us here today to present on behalf of the Mayoral Ad Hoc Substance Use and Recovery Committee. I am joined here today with my co-chair, Councilor Stephanie Jelinas, and Executive Director of Sandcastle Clinical and Education Services, and fellow committee member Catherine Ryder, the Chief Executive Officer of Tri-County Mental Health Services. In addition, many committee members are present behind us. I formed this committee almost a year ago, and we have met 11 times since then to explore the topic of substance misuse in Lewiston and how we can begin to be a recovery-ready community. Like many cities in Maine and across the U.S., we are dealing with substance misuse and its effects here in Lewiston. It's important to recognize substance misuse's effect on our community as a whole, and to also recognize its effect on the people around you, your coworkers, friends, and even family. Both Councilor Jelinas and CEO Ryder intimately know the deep and personal cost this epidemic has on our community, with each of them losing a son to accidental overdose. I'm thankful for their commitment to this committee and to our community as we do this work. Just under 3 weeks ago now, the heartbreaking unofficial numbers from 2022 came out. For the third year in a row, Maine broke its record for fatal drug overdose numbers, coming into a total of 707 deaths in 2022. This is unacceptable, and we need to position Lewiston as a recovery-ready community, a place where treatment, support, education come together to help our community members most in need. Thank you again for coming here today, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you to problem solve and better our community for the people who need it most here in Lewiston. And I would also like to acknowledge all of the members on the committee. So I have Councilor Jelinas, who's the co-chair, Heather Hunter, who's the city administrator for the city of Lewiston, Dave St. Pierre, who's the chief of police, Catherine Ryder, the CEO of Tri-County Mental Health, Dave Bilodeau, the options liaison for Androscoggin County, Tri-County Mental Health Services, Amran Osman, executive director and founder of Generational Nor, Dr. John Alexander, the Chief Medical Officer at Central Maine Healthcare, Dr. Doug Smith, Chief Medical Officer at St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, Doug Dunbar, Recovery and Reentry Workforce Specialist at Eastern Maine Development Corporation, Gordon Smith, Maine Governor's Office, Director of Opioid Response, Deb York, the Executive Director of Van Angels Wing, Neil McLean, District Attorney for District 3, Bruce King, Maine Inside Out, Chantel St. Laurent, Addictions Counselor at Recovery Connections of Maine, and Dottie Perriam-Whittaker, City of Lewiston. She provided staff support to the committee.
Can you hear me okay? All right. So I just want to review, tonight's agenda is going to involve me outlining for you the goals that the committee worked to identify at the start of our time together 11 months ago. And as I'll share those with you in a minute. After we formed those goals, we spent several months deliberating over what we perceive to be community assets, as well as currently community needs for the city of Lewiston as it pertains to substance misuse and recovery. Catherine's going to lead us through those findings. And then finally, I'll wrap up the workshop by presenting some recommendations to the city of Lewiston based on the work completed by this committee. So the first goal named by the committee was to develop a comprehensive plan with no silos or no wrong doors. The no silos point was to bring out the importance of collaborative efforts versus efforts occurring in silos by individual entities. We spoke as a committee a great deal about the importance of partnerships and resources coming together to create a greater impact. The no wrong doors point of this goal is to highlight the importance in recognizing that treatment and recovery is not one size fits all. Rather, there are different options, and no option should be viewed as a wrong door. Our second goal here, boldly stated, is to reduce overdose deaths with a target goal of 0 overdoses. Third, and as mentioned earlier, this committee set out on the task to develop a list of community assets as well as community needs related to substance misuse and recovery. And the fourth goal outlined by this committee came from much discussion, and that is to establish a recovery-ready community and what that really means for the city of Lewiston. And lastly, the fifth goal entailed using Maine's 4 pillars of care, and those are prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery support, and prioritizing Lewiston's needs within those pillars.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening, and thank you for your patience in listening to our presentation. I'm Catherine Ryder, CEO at Tri-County Mental Health Services, and it is my privilege to share with you what we have identified as assets and needs of our community. So the good news is we have a lot of assets, and one of those is lawsuit recovery money that is coming into the state and into our communities, still to be determined about its dispersion. Some funds have already been received, and so we are hopeful to be able to put those to good use. There are monies that have been allocated for workforce development, specifically in the field of substance misuse. There is a major HRSA grant that has come into the state that is funding the identification, training, licensure of individuals interested in working in this field, and much of that is dedicated to rural areas of the state, but some of that will also come to our local community. We have a diverse recovery community here in Lewiston, and this work of this committee has actually resulted in significantly more collaboration than when we first started. Many of us had been working together in different ways. There were really good relationships, but those relationships have been enhanced. Additional trust has been built, and bridges that cross us over into each other's circles of responsibility have been enhanced. And just as one example of that, I knew who Deborah York was from a distance. She's one of our committee members and the executive director of an Angels Wing, but I didn't know her up close and personal, and got to know her in that way. And we have been able to collaborate in a couple of different ways. One is that she's now sitting on my board, lucky me, and two, she will be co-located with one of her new programs in our agency as we help to screen and identify women who are in need of residential treatment for recovery. Project Support You. This is a City of Lewiston funded project. I've sat in front of you a few times before to discuss this program, and we have one of our very first Project Support You staff folks sitting behind me in the person of David Bilodeau. And this is a program where our staff co-respond with law enforcement, and they go out into the community to meet people where they're at. They may be in active overdose, they may be in the midst of a domestic violence situation. There are a number of different scenarios. We have one staff person who is walking the beat with one of the Lewiston officers, and so it allows us to get up close and personal and begin to build relationships with folks here in our community and gently encourage them each time we meet with them to contemplate a journey of recovery. The Options Program is a state-funded Governor Mills initiative, county by county, one full-time person, and that is now Dave. He moved from Project Support You to be our Androscoggin County Options co-responder, and that is very specifically targeted to individuals who are either in need of an intervention before they have an overdose experience or having an overdose experience, and we go out at that time and or we go out post an overdose to engage them in conversation and see if we can encourage them to accept any services. And one of the things that has been extremely beneficial is that Dave is often there in the moment, that most important moment when someone is being recovered with the administration of Narcan. And we've referred to it as imprinting, that person sees David's face, and then when he follows up, he is a known entity, and we continue those conversations. Dave has gone out multiple times to the same individual. And, you know, the truth of the matter is folks aren't always eager first contact to say yes, but Dave can tell you stories, and they are powerful stories of people he has touched many, many times before they have called and said, today's the day, let's do this before I change my mind. And that's sometimes what it takes, is that repeat presentation and connection. Central Maine Medical Center has a wonderful bridge program, which is embedded in their residency program. And this is low barrier with 3 levels of care where folks can receive induction, which is assessing what someone needs when they're coming into withdrawal to get them to a place of comfort, and then keep them on that dose ongoing so that they can continue to pursue a recovery journey. And I believe, and I'm going to turn around and see if Dr. Alexander is here. He's not. That all of their residents are trained in what used to be an X waiver requirement to administer Suboxone, Vivitrol, et cetera. And that waiver was just eliminated as a requirement federally. So that is a program that is putting new physicians out into the field ready and able to assist with folks who are looking for the beginnings of a recovery journey. We also have here in Lewiston, over at Mollison Way, through a program called Healthcare Resource Centers, a methadone program. And our Lewiston police and school departments have been trained and have Narcan available to them as needed. Pharmacies are really doing a lot of work in stepping up. My agency medical director has provided a standing order at Bedard Pharmacy as an example for folks who may need access to Narcan to be able to receive that. And Bedard's is also working with my organization. We have a long collaborative history with them around our hope of being able to have a mobile unit that could go out into the community for folks who are homeless, living in encampments, and need medical treatment and intervention for recovery. We're also working with a community health worker. This is someone who comes from the New Mainer community who is helping us to identify pathways for New Mainers who are struggling with substance misuse to find access to resources and treatment. And that is a relatively new position just over the past year, and we're looking forward to continuing to expand on that. There is grant money available from the state to many of our organizations here in the community for folks who are uninsured to be able to access services for substance misuse treatment. Warm handoffs between our organizations have improved significantly. A warm handoff is when we accompany someone to that next level of care so that one provider or one recovery coach is introducing that person to another resource, and they don't have to do that alone. We have been successful in establishing 2 syringe exchange programs here in the city of Lewiston, and those are in orientation we refer to as harm reduction, where we work with folks to reduce their use and to use as safely as possible to avoid transfer of disease and potential death for them and others. We have also, with the support of City of Lewiston, established 14 hazardous waste boxes across the community, and those are collected and counted and reported up to the Centers for Disease Control at the state of Maine on a regular basis. We also have 14 nalox boxes, and for anyone who was here when I did the presentation, you might recall that that looks a little bit like an AED. If someone is having a heart attack, the box looks very similar. It's wired. It has an alarm with it when you pull the box open to retrieve the Narcan and the other life-saving devices. It calls everybody to respond. We have lots of programs in our community, fortunately, that have no waits. We are typically able to get folks presented within 2 to 3 days when Dave and our Project Support You colleagues are working with them in the community. We now have 3 recovery residences, a Hand Up, which is for men and women, Recovery Housing of Maine for men, and Journey House also for men, and a new residential program called Travis House, which is for men only. We have Healthy Androscoggins Community Health Implementation Plan to address the importance of prevention. We've had 2 recovery rallies. The most recent was this past summer, and the event doubled in attendance. We look forward to continuing that. We have St. Mary's Behavioral Department and their intensive outpatient program for people with substance misuse disorder, and Dr. Doug Smith is here with us this evening from St. Mary's. Generational Newer is a youth-based program representing our new Mainer youth, and we have a wonderful young woman by the name of Amran Osman who has been working very closely with us and is making tremendous strides in engaging the community in that conversation. And then support services through an Angel's Wing. And I believe this is, so now we're going to move into our needs. So what does our community still need if we're truly going to be a recovery-ready community? And our committee mapped this all out and then had a very robust conversation, or 2 or 3, around what is most needed and most critical. And at the top of the list in bold print, you will see a comprehensive detox center with walk-in care. So right now, if we have somebody who needs detox, we have to take them out of community, and a significant ways out of community. So we're talking about either going to Portland or north to Augusta or Bangor. And if we had that resource here in the community, we believe that we could get people treatment when they need it. Because if you've ever seen somebody who is moving into withdrawal and those agonizing symptoms start for them, if you do not move quickly, you will lose them. And so we need to have a resource here that we can count on in a very timely, responsive way. So that is our number 1. Number 2 would be the mobile community outreach for induction that I mentioned to you. We have many unhoused folks in this community struggling with substance misuse, and we would love to be able to respond. I have staff at the ready. We are just waiting on a grant proposal that we put in that would allow us to begin that work and get folks started. Additional women's and men's recovery residences. We've talked about shortage of shelter and programming, and while we have some, it's not enough. Transitional housing for folks that are coming out of detox and different state of recovery housing, and there is some good work happening across the state that is establishing excellent clinical standards for these programs, and hopefully will yield wonderful outcomes. We are looking at in-person grief groups for substance misuse and overdose, as well as family support groups. So you might think that there are grief groups that are going on in our community, but I will tell you, as a mother of a young adult who died of an accidental overdose, it is not a group that you can just easily slide into. There is a difference losing a child to an overdose than to an illness. And so we have been working with a group out of Portland that does wonderful work in that realm, and we are looking to establish that resource here. Navigation across and amongst agencies to continue to grow versus handing someone a card. So we can give people RAC cards or referral forms to other organizations. We're really looking to help get them where they need to be, and having navigators, recovery coaches, folks working in the community that know where those resources are and can actually support them to get there. And then what is our resource availability in our local hospitals and our community-based centers when someone is ready for and asks for treatment? Are we ready when somebody walks into an emergency department? And I think there is work that is happening there, but we still have more progress that we need to make so that someone doesn't get turned away because the right provider wasn't working that evening. And I will tell you, I would love to see more nalox boxes up in our community. We know they're saving lives. We have been asked to come back and refill those boxes with Narcan. And as a result of some of those interventions, folks have expressed an interest in starting services and beginning their recovery journey. And then more needle drop boxes. So we're continuing through the work of our local law enforcement to identify where there are used syringes on the ground, because it would be critically important to get those up and stored in an appropriate, safe, secure, hazardous waste box so that we don't have anyone accidentally getting a needle prick that would result in some kind of an illness. That was carryover from the last one. So consistent, that's okay, that was me. I cut and pasted it, not you. Consistent transportation for care. So you probably have heard plenty about debacles with transportation for folks that are receiving services in the community. And sometimes they get to the appointment, but they don't get picked up to go home, or their ride arrives late, and so they miss their appointment. And so we're looking at other ways to get people to where they need to be. Continuing to outreach children and faculty at schools to increase prevention and education. We're working closely with Healthy Androscoggin and others because, gosh darn, if we could start early and prevent use, then we would be halfway home, wouldn't we? Emergency department we've already talked about, and also establishment of recovery coaches in our hospitals so that folks can see somebody when they are going in their time of need that has walked that path, understands their journey, and can help them to take those next steps forward. More recovery-ready workplaces to include time for treatment and recovery groups, and there is a robust initiative going on across the Lewiston Auburn communities focused on exactly that. Need to shape policy and public opinion, so we are always looking at what are we learning. Data should drive our decision-making, so we're gathering our data and presenting it to inform our communities and our lawmakers so that we can make good choices going forward. To educate and provide conversation venues for recovery resources and business owners. Let's debunk myths about substance use disorder and reduce the stigma around substance misuse and increase awareness of harm reduction. And my dear friend, colleague, and co-presenter this evening has coined a phrase that I use everywhere I go. And I was in DC a week ago presenting in front of our congressional delegates, and I will tell you what she says is the absolute truth. And she says, substance misuse is a wildly misunderstood disorder. And I will tell you, indeed it is, because the first time may be a choice, but friends, for many people, the second and onward from there are not choices. And so it's not a moral failure, and we have to find better ways of greeting people with compassion and treatment as we would with any other disease. Continue to grow the Rally for Recovery. We spoke about that earlier as an asset, and indeed it is. Culturally humble treatment for providers within the Black, Indigenous, people of color community. And how about we have people with lived experience be part of our decision making, because they've been there and they've done that and they know what works, and their voice is critically important.
Thank you, Catherine. We're sort of plowing through this with intent to allow you to ask some questions afterwards, but I'll wrap it up with some recommendations. As settlement funds and other funding opportunities come into or to the attention of our municipality, it is the hope of this committee that the work completed and the recommendations being offered up tonight will be thoughtfully considered in any decision-making process by the City of Lewiston. The first recommendation is to create educational opportunities. With much conviction, I will say that until we begin to educate our community about what substance use disorder is and what substance use disorder is not, it will be difficult to make headway. We have to take this wildly misunderstood disease and put effort as a community into breaking down the myths and the stigma that exists. As outlined earlier, Lewiston does not have a community-based detox center. And I want to be clear, in order for individuals to initiate this process, most often they have to travel to other cities to access this service. Lewiston does not offer this service. The development of such a resource, in addition to increasing detox options at our 2 local hospitals, is our second recommendation. Third, the importance of funding a mobile induction unit is offered as a very strong recommendation. And lastly, we recommend that the City of Lewiston address the need for a continuum of housing services for individuals in recovery.
Any questions?
Questions or comments? Yes.
Councilor Lashbell?
Who do I look at? Congratulations. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great job as a committee, Mr. Mayor. Excellent job, committee members. What impresses me the most is the groups of people that are getting together that are not being territorial. This is our field. This is important. You can't help us. Everybody needs to take our egos and check it at the door. This is going to be such a monumental task, and it takes everybody. It takes everybody. So thank you for pointing that out. It is super important. I know we have Senator Rotundo in the audience, and whatever help we can get from anybody, we need it. Every community needs it. So, yes, continue. I agree 100% with your assessment that we need a place. I, too, have driven people around the state. In the industry that I'm in, I shared with Stephanie this week, we pull an average of one dead person a month out of our buildings to drug over or misuse or whatever, excuse the lack of proper terminology. It's just sad. Bottom line, it's sad. People are dying by themselves, and it is sad. And until you've had the great misfortune of experiencing it or being there, you have no clue. You have no clue. So yes, I pledge whatever I can do to assist you in any way to moving this forward. And I hope that we can make this not just a Lewiston thing, because we want to check Lewiston's ego at the door also, and talk to Auburn, Sabattis, Lisbon, and let's make this a regional thing. The state is great when they're putting these people in here to say where to go. The problem is there's no place to go. There's no place to go. And the other problem is once they get done that short term, they just let go onto the street. This is a long-term process. Once you get done a detox and you think, oh, I'm good now, 2 days later you're back on the sauce or you're back on whatever. This has to be a 6-month long-term process. I could go on for hours. Just thank you very much. Great job. Let me know if there's anything I can do to assist you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Clement?
Thank you. Can't deny what you said is true. It's all very much true, but I look upon this.
Excuse me, Councilor, do you mind using the mic? Thank you.
You'll be able to hear me in just a second, I'm sure. I don't deny anything that you folks have had to say here. I agree with a lot of it, but I look upon this perhaps a little differently. What you're proposing would be the drain plug. Somebody has got to shut off the faucet. We can do all sorts of things at this level, but we have a problem much bigger, at a much bigger level. Entire economies, narco dollars, that are providing this material that is being misused. I mean, it's coming through our borders, nothing is stopping it. And we've got to put some effort towards that too. As long as the stuff's available, you know, you're just waving it in windmills. You've got to be able to do something about the availability of it, and I don't know what that is, whether we can put pressure upward. I mean, I agree with what we do on the local level, absolutely. Do what we can for our people, but we've got to make people aware of the fact that there's a problem that's hitting everywhere. It's, you know, you sit in the high levels of government and you don't see this on a daily basis, it's easy to ignore. But it hits, and it hits home. And we've seen that right in here in our community. In fact, 2 members of our committee can speak to that. And we've got to put some effort into letting other people know that this has got to stop. Do what we can here, but we've got to have some help from levels above us. Thank you.
Councilor Pease?
Thank you. Mine is just a couple of simple questions. Where is the closest place for them to go to? If Lewis is not available,
For what?
if the
Closest
closest
place for
place for somebody to go
detox?
for detox or whatever.
So the only community-based detox that is close enough for us to get to right now is down in Portland at Milestone, and there is another program up north. There are some that are beginning to develop, but I'm not sure that they're standing up just yet. So we don't have anything that is close enough for us to get somebody there within 15, 20 minutes.
So there's nothing within 50 or 60 miles.
Right.
The other question is, these boxes that we put out for Narcan and that, when it's open and one's taken, is there any regulation, is there any means of us knowing who took it out, what it was used for, when it was used, or anything?
Well, I guess that would depend. I mean, the boxes that we have established are if somebody is down. And so you would pull that open, it would set off an alarm, which means all comers. So we want people to respond. There's a rescue mask, there's Narcan in there. We distribute Narcan within the community and we train people to use it. But so when we report to the CDC, anything that we're training, it's all de-identified.
Okay, I see, I'm being honest, I didn't know how it worked. And I was curious because I know if it's there, they can just take it and use it whenever they need it. But if it sets an alarm and something happens and we're aware of it, it helps us keep track of what's going on. But that's basically, thank you for all you're doing on it, because it is a problem and it's getting bigger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Hammond? I did want to add also a thank you. I greatly appreciate the amount of work that was put here. I also want to thank both of you specifically because as a mom, and a mom that has had to deal with some stuff personally herself with her own children, not to your extent, I really, really appreciate the commitment that you have put to our community for this. It's really, really important work. I guess my question would be, I would agree, I'm willing to support, I'm here to support whatever we can do, but I want to know how we can move forward a little bit more. I don't know, I appreciate that you've reported out, but I don't know that I think that this committee should stop working. I think that the work needs to continue in respect to, right, those connections that you're making, like you said that you connected with Angel's Wings, and those conversations need to continue. And how do we do that if we don't have an ad hoc committee? Is there any thought on moving forward so that we can not only initiate some of the things that you think the goals that we need are, but continuing this work to move forward?
Thank you, Councilor Scott. That's a great question. We talked about that this past Friday. The committee met, and the initial goal when the group came together was to, like I said, identify assets and needs, and then some recommendations for the city of Lewiston. But we made a decision that we'd like to continue meeting on a quarterly basis because clearly we want to stay in touch with what's happening. The idea is as funds come in or funds are identified, that we've put these recommendations forth and we've really prioritized what the needs are for the city. So to be able to come together and just keep talking about those things and what availability is there, what's coming in next, what can we do with this, and really helping to drive and guide those decisions is really the intent of the committee.
Great, thank you. Councilor McCarthy?
If I can just add
sure.
one thing to that. So, Catherine has alluded to that, as Stephanie did just now. So, beyond providing input, how the city can spend settlement funds, there has been a lot of collaboration around the table. There's been a lot of value in bringing the recovery community together here in Lewiston, and the value of that cannot be overstated.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Councilor Scott. What are the stumbling blocks on getting a detox center set up in Lewiston? Why is the other cities been able to do it and Lewiston can't seem to either get funding or get someone to do it, or what are the major cruxes or major bridges that need to be crossed?
So where do I start? So it is in some part funding, and most of us have been rubbing nickels and dimes together through COVID. Our workforces have been decimated. Folks went home to work and many didn't come back. And so staffing is an issue, and it requires some medical presence. You need nurses within the program and other clinicians available. So that's a piece of it, is the staffing, funding to actually set the program up. And then, a community that's willing to support the work of a detox center. And, turnover in our field is fairly high. The work is burnout, and folks get tired and they move along. And so, we need to keep growing people who want to do this work and have a fire in their belly for it. And, I would say there's a little bit of a misnomer in our presentation in that we said there is no detox in our community. There is detox for alcohol. but there is not detox for opioids unless it's complicated by alcohol or benzodiazepines. And our good Dr. Smith could go into more detail about that, and it's a funding stream issue. And I would say to you that that funding stream issue is laden in stigma as well. And so we need to do this community-based detox if we're going to save lives, because we can't get folks into the hospital systems to do that work, by and large.
So the state doesn't provide any funding for a detox center?
There are RFPs that roll out that you can respond to, and some folks have, and that's what I said. I think there's some germination of some additional programs across the state. I don't know of anyone here, and I could be wrong about that, anyone here in Greater Lewiston that has anything that is moving forward in that realm.
Who runs the program in Portland?
Milestone Recovery.
And that is, I mean, is that an individual? Is it a group? Is it a corporation? Or is it city funded?
It's a nonprofit, but I don't know if they are affiliated with a larger healthcare organization. To the best of my knowledge, they're fully independent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Harriman?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you and all the committee members for doing this work. Thanks.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Not for me. Catherine or Stephanie?
No, thank you for listening, and, here's to hoping that we can move the needle, no pun intended.
Excellent.
Thank you for all the committee members who served on this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
That'll close this workshop at this point. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, really good work. Really, really good work. Stephanie, really good work. Thank you.
Yes, and what's going to happen, not everybody's going to agree.
You're going to do it from there?
I just so like that Okay.
Administrator Hunter? Is it, it's him who's presenting?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we're... Excuse me, we have another workshop we need to get to. If we can move conversations to the hall, I'd be deeply appreciative. And now we will have our second workshop here from our Deputy Administrator, Brian O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give a brief overview of what's been going on with what's called the Sewall Foundation. I'm not aware if you're all familiar with this group. They came to the Lewiston Auburn area, I believe, in 2019. They have funds that they want to spend. 2020, they had a study put together interviewing different diverse community members and what goals they would like to see or assist our community in accomplishing. So what they have is what's called Healthy People, Healthy Places. And these are grants that they're giving to nonprofits and to the public sector. And I just received a proposal list of what they're going to be doing. I mean, they're talking about giving money to Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Androscoggin Land Trust, the Dempsey Center, the Lewiston Farmers Market, to the cities of Lewiston and Auburn, New Beginnings, Store Next Door. There's a litany of nonprofits that they're working with. And what they were trying to do was cut down on the competition where nonprofits are all competing against each other. So they've had quite a process, probably about 8-10 months, in terms of how they were going to disperse the money. The city of Lewiston hired a DEI director. We were the first one in this area to do that. Auburn is going to be hiring one, and what they want to do is give money to the cities to support this position of DEI director. So we would not be hiring a new person with this funds. It would help offset the cost for our DEI director as well as the DEI director that they're going to hire over in Auburn. Some of you are familiar with City Spirit. Some of you were on the city council when the city adopted the equity statement. City Spirit helped write that equity statement. I did put into the packet what City Spirit was. That started back in 2018. I brought that to the city with Fatuma Hussein from the Department of Justice after the murder of Donald Giusti and Kennedy Park on Knox Street. And that brought a lot of our nonprofits, the city, the schools, the police at the time, when I was the chief, together to work on what we could do to help with the tensions here in the city. As some of you may remember, we had the Peace in the Park workers, folks that were wearing the yellow T-shirts, were kind of doing their own patrol and helping, the green dot diffusing situations before it rose to the level of violence occurring. Unfortunately, with COVID, City Spirit has kind of paused a little bit. Over this past year, we interviewed several different people to get a director. Sewall is going to pay for someone to lead the City Council, City Spirit Council. So we just wanted to let you know that this money is coming. There's no strings attached. We don't have to have any matching funds. But it's to keep the project going with our DEI director and just many things throughout the city. So the city administrator asked that I just kind of give you an update. So if you see this money coming in, you'll know what it's coming for. Our hope is that with the work that our DEI director is doing, with all our city employees, making City Hall a more welcoming place so everybody feels like they can come in here, she'll be able to work with the City Spirit Director, and give her some ideas of, some outreach for the community as well. I know that coming up at the end of February, the 28th, over at the library, we're putting on, the DI Director's putting on a movie, having some speakers coming, which is for city employees and people in the city. So it's kind of a combination of the two, and this is what these funds are to do, to assist with those type of programs.
I still have my Peace in the Park T-shirt. I didn't find out until later that was a program of City Spirit. But
I know yellow is your color, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, yes. But I appreciate all of your involvement and help.
Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So nothing really needed from the council at this time, but when that comes in, we'll probably see an agenda item to approve that that grant or something. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Just so I'm clearly understanding this, so it isn't murky in my head. So the funds are being disseminated to the Immigrant Resource Center of Maine. They're the fiscal agents, and then the money gets distributed to the cities to support the DI work.
That's correct.
Is
and
that
they
correct?
initially
So-
they were having discussions of giving it to Auburn for a DEI director, and we said, well, we have a DEI director, we should get some of those funds as well, even though the city council is already supporting that position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything else, Mr. O'Malley?
That is it.
Okay. That concludes our workshop, and we will be, our workshops. Thank you, everyone, and we will be kicking things back off at 7. Hello, and welcome to the Lewiston City Council. We're about to begin here. And we are honored to have Mr. Tim Gallant lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now have our Lewiston Leads presentation, and we're going to begin with the councilor from Ward 4, Councilor LaChapelle.
Good evening. May I have my candidate for the Lewiston Leads Award Program, Yao Alfredo Arenicu, come to the front, if I didn't mangle that last name. Thank you. Thank you, Yao. Yao was born in the country of Togo in West Africa. His father was a high-ranking Special Forces officer working in the presidential palace. When he turned 10, civil war broke out, and his family fled for their lives to a refugee camp in Guyana. His family stayed in that camp with 17,000 other refugees for 8 years. Just imagine how difficult life was just to stay alive during that time. In 2001, his family, along with 500 other refugees, qualified to immigrate to America. He and his family were brought here to Lewiston. He first had to learn to speak English and then earned his GED. He wanted more, so he went on to college, earning 2 associate's degrees and later a bachelor's degree. While going to school, he maintained a full-time job and got married to his lovely wife, Jermaine. They purchased a home in Lewiston and had 3 children. If that wasn't enough, in his spare time, he volunteered as a translator for the Haitian people who came to Lewiston for medical treatment. They not only translated for them, he and his wife prepared meals and assisted them in many other transportation needs. He currently works 60 hours a week as a medical technologist at St. Mary's and CMMC. In fact, he took his lunch break to join us this evening. He is fluent in 5 languages and still has time to work out. He looks like a stud. Look at this guy. He and his wife have instilled into their children the deep love of this country. They have made it a priority within the family to give back. Together, the family volunteers at the Farwell School Pumpkin Festival and are involved in the Kids Unleashed summer program put on by Pathway Vineyard Church. Their daughter, Haley, was in this chamber just a few weeks ago, receiving recognition for being part of the LHS debate team. If you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Yao, you will be so impressed by his positive attitude and constant smile on his face. It's just infectious. Being around Yao and his family is just infectious. I just love being around positive people, and he makes the difference every day when I've seen him. I asked him how he kept such a positive attitude, to which he gives all credit to Christ and his deep-rooted faith in God, love of country, and love of family. Lewiston was built by people like Yao and his family. Their positive, can-do-anything attitude is infectious. Thank you for choosing to stay in Lewiston and becoming the leader you are. Lewiston needs more people like you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And Ward 7 Councilor Stephanie Jelinas is next.
As part of the Lewiston Leads program, it is my pleasure and my honor this evening to recognize a Ward 7 resident by the name of Elaine St. Pierre. Come on up, Elaine. Elaine was born in Lewiston, and while educated in Auburn, she moved to Lewiston thereafter and has lived here her entire adult life, and in her words, has no desire to leave. As you know, the Lewiston Leads program highlights individuals who are actively enhancing the vibrancy of Lewiston, and I have the opportunity to recognize Elaine tonight for her efforts to this end. Elaine is an entrepreneur. She is the founder of a Lewiston-based company called Simply Organized Spaces. Check out her website. It is totally cool. What an adventure. She has a background in administration, job development, and workforce services. She serves on the LA Metro Chamber Board of Directors and the Chamber Membership Services Committee. I am recognizing Elaine this evening with a Lewiston Challenge coin because her spirit of volunteerism and support is second to none. She has been a cheerleader for so many Lewiston projects. While being an advocate for local businesses, Elaine can be found at ribbon-cutting events and supporting by attending many a fundraiser for Lewiston agencies. Elaine, I recognize you, and I thank you tonight for your continued support of our community, your positive messaging about the city of Lewiston, and your behind-the-scenes support of efforts our city businesses put forth have not gone unnoticed. Elaine, the city of Lewiston and our community is a better place because of you. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our Lewiston leaders, please. Madam Clerk, we are ready to begin.
Yes, sir. All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Council of Ward 7.
And if it pleases the council, we will table acceptance of the minutes until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yep.
At this time, we have the public comment period. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office. Yeah, please proceed whenever you're ready.
Yeah. My name is Donna Grant. I live in Lewiston, Ward 7. I am chair of the Lewiston Senior Advisory Committee. The Lewiston Senior Advisory Council, whose members were nominated by the council, has been meeting monthly since September. We invited Patricia O. to our last meeting. She is the Senior Program Manager at the University of Maine Center on Aging. Besides talking with us about the steps needed for a community to be designated age-friendly by AARP, she has helped us by providing statistics from the 2020 census data for Lewiston. I share them with you tonight and will also provide them to you in writing. The members of the Lewiston Senior Advisory Council support the development of affordable housing for seniors in our community. And we have several members of the Senior Advisory Council in our audience tonight. 40% of Lewiston's residents who are 65 or older live alone. Although 17.9% of Lewiston's residents are 65 or older, 31% of the households include at least one person over the age of 65. So issues of aging impact a disproportionate percentage of Lewiston households. The median income for households headed by a person 65 or older is $30,503, compared with $48,069 for the overall population. About 22% of older residents, 60 years plus, participate in SNAP, which is the food stamp program, benefits, compared with 26% of younger families. Approximately 49% of Lewiston's older residents are income eligible for SNAP benefits. So I would like to take this time and look at affordable housing for our seniors. Thank you. This is
Good evening, and again, thank you all for serving and being on this council to support our community. My name's Tim Gallant. I live in Lewiston, Ward 7, 533 Webster Street, and I pretty much know all of you. I'm here too about senior housing and a concern that I have and we feel, and in Lewiston, it's just it's a big hole. There's nothing there for our seniors, being a senior, and a few of you up there are seniors as well. My concern is that we have all these ad hoc committees, but there's no senior housing ad hoc committee. And last check, economic development, and I went through all their notes on talking about seniors, and so we need to do something with that, put something together so we can start looking at it. Down the street, we have a congressman, we have a senator, there's money in the federal government for programs, but you don't get it unless you go ask. We have representatives here tonight from Augusta, people who sit chair positions in Augusta that maybe can find us some money to help with this process. So I think it's time for us to do things for our citizens. Last year's real estate tax is a little over 60 million. I'm in the ballpark, I think. 10 million of that came from seniors 65 or older. It's about time we give some money back to our seniors. 6 of the money coming in comes from them, and actually it's up as high as 18% because a lot of people have 65 or older didn't fall into that percentage because they have someone living with them. Maybe they live with their kids, or maybe their kids nowadays live with them. So that makes it $18 million a year that they put into our budget here at the city. We don't have kids in school. We're not doing all these other little frilly things that go along. So I think it's only fair that we give the opportunity for us to have senior housing. I know in a couple of weeks we'll be talking about Martell and the situation going on over there. I know that it was involved with Lewiston Housing to be seniors, and now it somehow has slipped past, and I know it's in the works, but I'd be amiss for not bringing that back up to everyone that, for what it cost to level that property and then to give it to Lewiston Housing to build senior housing as a baseline, maybe our fair share into it while they go look for money, would probably be a really good deal. We know the property is worth a lot more than what's currently being advertised as being sold at. So I would ask you all to consider that maybe we should just level it ourselves and give it to someone who can produce some decent senior housing for our people. And we have enough vacant lots, we have enough vacant buildings in this community that having it torn down by someone who doesn't know if they're going to build anything doesn't seem like a good plan to me. So, again, I want to thank everyone for giving me this time to speak this evening. And again, I want to thank you for doing what you do. I know it's a thankless job many times. God bless.
Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Marcia Baxter. I live at 22 Buttonwood Lane and Ward 1. And I'm speaking tonight as a concerned resident and taxpayer. I am also a member of the Lewiston Senior Advisory Council. I was very surprised and became alarmed when I read about your decision to not approve an extension to the parties interested in developing the senior housing on the site of the Martell School building, now owned by the city. I know that you all carefully weigh facts when you make your decisions. I know you try to balance meeting the many needs of our residents. There are always fiscal restraints, and there are always conflicting opinions. I've read and reread the newspaper coverage about this property since the school department turned it over to the city. And I know also this is not an agenda item tonight, and you're going to be taking it up in the future. I know you're waiting for more information to be able to further discuss this issue. I just wanted to say that even if the old part of the Martell property or the newer sections of that school are beyond cost-effective renovation, that lot is still a prime piece of property already owned by the city, and there still is interest in developing it for affordable senior housing. So I'm just speaking to ask you to slow down the process and give folks time to put together some proposals and then make your decision once you have more information about what might still be feasible at that site. It's a good location, and the need is here, and you'll probably hear more about that when it is an agenda item, because I have heard that there are a lot of people making comments on social media. I haven't been following a lot of that, but I know that this is an issue that does concern a lot of people in the community. So I want to thank you all.
Luke Jensen, Ward 5, Sylvan Avenue. I just would take the time to agree with what the past three speakers have said. You know, when I was on the council, we had a vote to decide what to do with the property, the building, and, you know, we had a lot of information, and I still stand by my decision to pursue senior housing. We just haven't really done enough of that in the community, and we need more. I did want to come speak, I guess, also about transparency. I was very disappointed at last meeting, the agenda item where essentially you guys just agreed to stick by the rules that you already had in place. I was hoping something could be said afterwards, because there's been a little drama, it's been in the news, we've seen it at council meetings, something like that after decisions made in executive session, which again is legally questionable, whether that was, you know, allowed, actual personnel. So I guess as a member of the community, it would have been nice to get some kind of explanation to say, here's how we're moving forward, here's what we've come up with, rather than just come out, literally say nothing, and just agree to sign the paper for the rules that you already abide by. So can you see as a citizen how that doesn't instill confidence in me, and it actually does the opposite? So, I mean, I don't know what's supposed to be done there. I mean, Mr. Mayor, I think that's on you. You're the leader of this group. You've got to step up and say something, even if you guys don't come to an agreement. I just can't imagine Mark Kerr as mayor, like, not saying anything. But it also comes down to, I get the disagreement. I don't think anybody's perfectly right here, or anybody's perfectly wrong. I do think it's 100% wrong to try and take away the mayor's ability to speak on issues. I mean, that's just, like, you know, so much tradition in the city. It's just, that's ridiculous. You've got to realize that. But it's also not good. Well, when I was on the council, we had, I don't think it was written down, but it was a rule that when the council made a decision, and even if it was a 4-3 vote, the three losing members wouldn't go on social media and trash the decision. They wouldn't disagree with it. They wouldn't even go to media and say how much we disagreed with the decision. We understood that even if we disagreed, we're a city, we have to make decisions and move forward. It's what we have to do. The city's not going to make any progress unless we do that. So to see decisions be made and then to have members of the body, yourself in particular, Mr. Mayor, go to the media, go on social media and say how much you disagree with the decision, that is a problem. And if I were on the council, I may have made a motion to censure you, to be perfectly honest. I don't agree with taking away the right to vote. But to say that someone having an issue with you isn't valid is not true, because that's got to change too. So I think going forward, I mean, my hope is that you guys can maybe just talk one-on-one. You don't need executive sessions. Just have the one-on-one conversations you guys need to have. Realize you're different people. You're not going to agree on everything. It's human nature. But just try to find a path going forward here. But really make transparency a priority going forward, because at this point, I'm not very confident in this body, unfortunately. So that's all I really wanted to say, just how disappointed I was that nothing was said. I hope something is said going forward. That's all.
Further public comment?
My name is Louise Sampson, and I live at 324 Pine Street. I was here last week with the planning board meeting regarding the senior housing development, Martell School. And since I have laryngitis, I don't want to talk very long. I've been following that project since it first became on the media, so it's over a year ago. And I signed up to showing interest to be living there if it came to fruition. And I certainly would like to see it happen. We need it. And from what I understand, over 1,600 people have applied to live there. And it's only 44 units. What does that tell you? That tells you we need many more apartments for seniors. Thank you.
Further public comment? Madam Clerk, agenda item number 1.
Sure. Item number 1, public hearing on application for new liquor license and special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Cage, 97 through 99 Ash Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application and special amusement permit for the Cage, 97 through 99 Ash Street.
May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Whole bunch of people, but I heard Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Ehrman. Discussion? Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So first off, yay. Secondly, yay. As somebody who has frequented the Cage with her husband for many, many, many years, as somebody who has her name on the King of the Hill plaque for the NASCAR, I am very happy to see that this establishment has been going to be moving forward and that you're applying for this, and you definitely have a yes from me. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was very pleased that this is going to happen. The Cage has been an iconic place in Lewiston for quite a few years. I know eons ago, I think it was back in the late 60s, my father-in-law actually owned the place with some investors, and it was called Moe's Hideaway. Morris Collins, he was president of the police commission when he passed away in the mid-'70s, but I know, I'm trying to find the picture and I can't, but somewhere in our archives we have a picture of him and his crew at Moe's Hideaway, and if I ever find it, I'll make a copy of it and get it to you guys. But thanks again for resurrecting the Cage.
I had never been to the Cage before, and when I heard that it was closing, I wanted to go. I went. It's pretty cool inside, and the jalapeno poppers are great. So. Further discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, public comment.
We have one clerical error on the floor.
Can you, excuse me, can I get you to go to the podium and identify yourself, please?
Good evening. My name is Kevin Barrett. There is one clerical error on the form. So we are forming an LLC under the Cage. On the form it says incorporated. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And I'm also here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to congratulate you guys on picking this place back up. I was a little disappointed when I saw it was closing, and then when I saw the good news, I was really ecstatic. I want to wish you both and the company all the luck in the world, and may you prosper with this.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Good luck, guys.
Madam Clerk, agenda item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing and approval to amend the 2015-2019 CDBG Consolidated Plan and Fiscal Year 19 Action Plan. Requested action to conduct a public hearing and approve the order amending the 2015-2019 CDBG Consolidated Plan and Fiscal Year 19 Action Plan.
May I have a motion, please?
Move for passage.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Clement. Director Jeffers, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, and I'll try to keep it short. The city received $538,518 in CARES Act dollars back when COVID was running rampant. And it was federal dollars bound by HUD rules, and it required that the funds could only be used to help address the issues raised with by COVID. We had allocated, the council had allocated the dollars, and we had some economic development money set aside to help some of our small nonprofits, and not nonprofits, downtown businesses, restaurants, retailers, helping them, whether it was bringing in, helping separation or the PPP type protection for them. And we just didn't get that much interest in the programs. There were so many federal dollars flowing around at that point that the programs we created really didn't get much traction. And we also had put out a request for proposal to the nonprofits that typically apply for funding, with the caveat that the funds had to be used to really help address the issues brought about by COVID. And again, we just didn't get that much interest in it. At this point, we do have money. We've got a deadline to spend it. Of June 18th by 2023, and we are asking the council to have a public hearing regarding this, but also to reallocate those dollars that had originally gone to the agencies, been earmarked for the agencies, and for economic development initiatives, and put them into public facilities where we are having people saying, look, I could use those dollars. I want to improve the heating and ventilation of my building, things that really address the needs directed by the funding source that had to address COVID. In a nutshell, that's it. It'll be $243,009 made available for public facilities, public infrastructure to help address the issues of COVID. That's really the action before you.
Thank you, Director Jeffers. At this point, I would like to go to the public hearing. Any members of the public wish to comment on this during this public hearing for this agenda item? Back to the council. Questions or comments? Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. I'm still, so you're just asking that we hold public meetings to see how to spend the rest of the money?
To reallocate the dollars, we've done public hearings throughout. This action requires us to amend a consolidated plan from 5 years ago. So we're going through the public process required by HUD, but really for the broader public, it's really just a reallocation of dollars that was originally targeted to nonprofits for services or to small downtown businesses. We just didn't get anybody applying for those dollars.
So reallocate it to whom?
Generally to public facilities. Anybody who comes, once again, we would
Okay,
have
it's
to
just to put it into that kitty and then
put
they
it
can
in that
apply-
category.
They can apply for that. Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So you gave us a list of, well, you listed out the different goals that this money could be used for. Is that, am I reading that correctly in that?
Actually, what was included in your package was really the action plan, which was not only CDBG, it was CDBG CARES, it was sort of an assemblage. And
Okay.
again, it's the HUD regulations and how we have to, various reports we need to put out.
Okay.
But that's what the attachment of the action was.
And so some of the things that you had in here, like nonprofits, send a notice of funding available to agencies providing additional services to assist families in need, including reimbursements. Is this some of the stuff you're going to try to look at? Are you going to reach out to some of these places again to see if there's a need?
Since this money was put out there, we've had at least, I think we're into our second, perhaps third round of funding the agencies. We've had other pots of money that we've made them aware of as well. The use of these dollars are pretty limited, but we have been continuing to fund. We'll be back in front of you later in March with a recommendation. Councilor Jelinas is on the committee for the regular CDBG. It's just we weren't, for what the original council who got to make recommendations on this, we just weren't getting activity on it. And we're getting activity in other areas, and that's why we're asking it to reallocate.
So the end of March, that was going to be my next question. You're going to come back with some suggestions for us for where that's going to go.
In the next, not this money, but the next round of CDBG,
Okay.
which will be coming, but that process is underway right now.
Okay, but are we going to get an update on where this would be used if we're going to? That's what I'm wondering, this specific amount.
This money, we're asking you to say it's available. Any decisions on it will be coming back to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Further comment or discussion from the council? You good, Director Jeffers?
I'm good if you're good.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Pease, yes.
Thank you. So do I understand you right? They can't apply for any of these monies now? These are just going into something
Well,
else?
We've had these monies out there, nobody's been applying for them. And so we need to spend this money, otherwise we have to give it back to the federal government. What we have been getting interest in, and that meets the qualifying criteria, that it addresses the issues brought about by COVID, separation, personal protective equipment, that type of thing. It is largely boiled down to improvements to heating and ventilation systems and separations and physical facilities. The money, as it was first set up, wasn't out. There wasn't enough money for that. Where we did have it, nobody was applying. And so we're asking you to put it towards public facilities.
And how is this advertised, so that people know?
As far as this public hearing, I believe it was just in the last few weeks that we put public notice out saying, this is the action that's going to be before the council. And as far as actually having agencies apply, we have not yet, because the money's not there.
I guess I was concerned on previously, when it first came available, you said you didn't get any response, no applications. I'm wondering, what was the process to?
I'm sure we did put out notice. We've got distribution lists for all the agencies that we historically have worked with. We have lots of contacts. My staff was making lots of calls to all the businesses downtown who were struggling, saying, we have money available. Do you need help getting personal protective equipment? Do you need help putting up signage? Do you need help getting the little dispensers for the sanitizers? Do you need help for plexiglass between you and your customers? We reached out. There was a lot of other federal dollars, the strings associated with this program. They're like, there's easier places to get the money. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jeffers. Agenda item number 3.
Item number 3, receipt of recommendations from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board on the fiscal year 24 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan. Requested action to receive and review the recommendations from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board regarding the fiscal year 24 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan.
So moved.
Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion. Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if we're taking comment on both of these items or not, but if indeed you are, I would just call to my colleagues' attention that in the audience tonight, we have the authorizing or authoring, if that's a correct word, the author of the Finance Committee's recommendation to the council. Staff person presented the recommendation from the Planning Board. This gentleman is just a committee member. Put a lot of work into this, input from committee members, and you see the quality of his work there in the recommendation. It has always been the purview of the Finance Committee to not go item by item through the LCIP, but rather come back with general recommendations and considerations for the council. And I think Mr. McLaughlin did an excellent job for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I just want to thank both the Planning Board and the Finance Committee, both for the work that they did on this. I wish that I was able to have seen the conversation that happened on the Finance Committee, but I did watch the conversation that happened with the Planning Board, and I appreciate a robust discussion talking about all the different details. And again, I just want to thank both for the work they've done.
Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
And Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Phoenix. Agenda item number 5, correct? Sorry, thank you. Agenda item number 4.
Item number 4, resolve adopting the fiscal year 2024 Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan. Requested action that pursuant to Article 6, Section 606E of the city charter, the city council hereby approves the resolve adopting the fiscal year 24 City of Lewiston 5-year capital improvement program as prepared by the city administrator.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Word 4?
Yes.
Word 5?
Yes.
And Word 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
And now we're up to agenda item number 5.
Number 5, and is my understanding that item number 5 is going to be postponed at this time and brought forth to another meeting?
Yes, that's my understanding. May I have a motion to table?
So moved.
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Word 2?
Yes.
Word 3?
Yes.
Word 4?
Yes.
Word 5?
Yes.
Word 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0. And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I thought it was just going to be removed from the agenda. Just for the benefit of the public, is it okay if I just read the agenda item for clarity for them? So they understand?
Absolutely,
Thank you so much. So item 5 that the council just voted to table is order authorizing the conveyance of 65 Oxford Street, rear, Lewiston, Maine, to Continental Mill LLC in exchange for an easement on the western edge of the Continental Mill property upon which the riverfront trail will be extended from Samard Payne Park to Cedar Street. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Administrator Hunter, we're anticipating that on the March 7th meeting.
At this juncture, yes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6. There
6,
we go.
item number 6, resolve, authorizing a transfer of $107,182 from the Oak Street parking facility to fund the updated cost of the Dufresne Plaza project.
So moved.
Requested action to approve the resolve, authorizing a transfer of $107,182 from the Oak Street parking facility to fund the updated cost of the Dufresne Plaza project.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Director Brenchick, please kick us off.
Hi, this project has been existing since 2019 in preparation for the 2020 capital plan, so the pricing was low. A lot of this increase was just due to pricing in general, but there's also consideration for continued failure of the combined water and sewer that's underneath all of that, storm drain and sewer, I mean. And so that will get corrected. The underlayment of the gravel underneath those pavers was part of the problem. There's only approximately 3 inches of gravel underneath that. So that was the substantial piece of 70,000 of this. So we're making it to last. We've got a very inclusive design for all the future events and events planning and Christmas lighting and all of that. So I think we've got a solid design. We needed a little extra money for this, and luckily the parking garage had a credit for using the existing conduits. So that's why we chose that account to transfer it from. And just, looking at jumping on it first thing in the spring.
Thank you. Discussion from the council or questions? Councilor Herman?
Thank you. I'm just glad to see this happening. That's really a key downtown area for events and things, and I'll be glad to not have to walk around the big puddles anymore. So thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I also wanted to add that I'm glad to see this is happening. I'm really glad to see the electrical upgrades for food trucks in Dufresne Park. And also, I would just remind everybody that, once we get the new planters in, let's make sure that we're in contact with Downtown Lewiston Association, because they do a lot of planting down there. So we can coordinate and make sure that that continues to move forward with all of that. So thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Yeah, no, this is a great local, a great downtown park, and we've had a number of events there over the summer, and I can't wait to have more of them. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, resolve authorizing a transfer of $75,000 from the Main Street project to enter into an agreement with Maine DOT for a planning partnership initiative to study transportation improvements for Main, Sabattis, and Canal Streets, and if awarded, accept and appropriate the grant funds. Requested action, to approve the resolve authorizing a transfer of $75,000 from the Main Street project to enter into an agreement with Maine DOT for a planning partnership initiative to study transportation improvements for Main, Sabattis, and Canal Streets, and if awarded, accept and appropriate the grant funds.
May I have a motion,
So moved.
please? Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Director Brenchick.
This partnership is an ongoing application in partnership with the Maine Department of Transportation. What we had to do was decide what we wanted to do. So we looked at some corridors that we already have some work started on, but we wanted to all coordinate. So all of Sabattis Street had been looked at before for road diets and the 4 lanes compared to 3 lanes, you know, the utilities. And then for Main Street, we have a project that you guys approved earlier, a grant for the SS4A, which is pedestrian safety. So that stops on at Fry and Main. So we would continue at Fry, go all the way down Main to the bridge. So that's that whole Main Street corridor, the Sabattis Street corridor, and then we added Canal Street because during the Riverfront Master Plan update, we have a great idea of what we want to do there. We've had some really strong public process, but for the other streets, we haven't had a lot of public process. So this will be a community-led program, so there'll be a committee that we assign to do this and lead this. And the state has been very gracious in partnering with us and helping us develop this idea to leverage for millions of dollars in grants. So, you know, it's a starting point. That's what we thought we shouldn't wait, is now that we've got a concept of the areas that we want to focus on. We'll be dealing with safety, mobility, equity, future development, those kind of categories.
Thank you. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So just a question on the Main Street construction. So I think it was about a year and a half ago, we had I believe it was a Zoom meeting where several members of the community, myself included, yourself, Maine DOT, discussing what was going to be happening on the Main Street corridor. Is this going to change any of that, or is this just a continuation of that conversation and expanding to Canal and Sabattis?
The project that's funded to be the paving in 2024 is for basic pavement preservation
Right.
and sidewalk enhancements. This is a legacy project that will be for the next 20 years. So it
Okay.
might take us years to get it developed. It starts with this plan, but it will be for the next 20 years type of improvements, pedestrian lighting, realignment of intersections, new signals. It's for a bigger picture.
Okay, and you said it's going to start from Fry Street. I'm only asking because that's
Fry.
that's my corridor,
Yep.
so I pay close attention to that. So Fry Street down to Canal Street or to the bridge?
To the bridge, yeah.
Okay,
And-
so we're
and
not gonna-
including the bridge.
Okay. Is there any way that we can include from the Marketplace Mall down to the bridge?
We have the SS4A.
Sorry.
The other grant goes from Fry Street all the way down to
Strawberry.
Mollison or
Okay.
further down. So
okay,
it goes
all
pretty
right.
far down.
Okay.
And then it goes over the bridge.
Great.
To the Veterans Bridge
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
Further comment from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, resolve authorizing a transfer of $75,000 from the miscellaneous service account to enter into an agreement with HNBT for a traffic analysis associated with the potential development of 128 Farwell Street, map lot 147-18. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing a transfer of $7,500 from the miscellaneous service account to enter into an agreement with HNBT NTB for a traffic analysis associated with the potential development of 128 Farwell Street, map lot 147-18.
So moved.
Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor LaChapelle. Director Hediger, please kick us off.
Sure. So you folks may remember back in November, we were looking to rezone corridor along Sabata Street. We got to the property on Farwell Street. It's the large lot behind the Noria gas station and runs parallel to Charles Street. Controversy about what uses might occur there, what traffic generation would impact Farwell Street, because there's some apparent issues already with Farwell out there. So you folks took an action to basically not approve the rezoning of that, but encourage any contract zoning to potentially go forward with that. And we have talked to that property owner about potentially contract zoning that, but it was also mentioned at that council meeting about the need to explore the traffic just proactively out there to see what issues might actually exist. So we did get two prices, you see in your application, from the city's peer engineer. One's a higher level, so to speak, as far as a broad look at what the traffic would be out there. The other one is more detailed, something you might expect with a specific project application where someone submits a traffic movement permit. At this point, we're recommending scope 1, as you see in there, for the $7,500, just to give us a broad idea as to what issues might exist out there. A lot of that data already exists from DOT. We may need to get some from AvCog or A-Track as well, where there's some missing parts in that, but otherwise, that number should give us, or that analysis should give us a rough idea as to what kind of issues exist out there.
Discussion. Councilor Jelinek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will preface this question by saying, I'm certainly in support of a traffic analysis at that location. But when I was looking at the Scope 1 proposal for that amount of money and then realizing that the developer has the expectation to do a traffic analysis, I couldn't, and the way I think I understood it, maybe I guess this is my question. When I think about a comprehensive traffic analysis that's expected of the developer, I don't understand, is this not redundant, or is this something separate, or is this a cross-check? I'm just trying to understand.
So when a project, there'll be some redundancy, I guess, to answer that part of it. Absolutely, there'll be some redundancy. But when you do a more detailed traffic analysis, which a project would be required to do if they hit 100 trips in an hour, then they are looking at specific intersections, and they may have to update the counts. So they may not be looking at historical data. They may actually send somebody out in the field at that point and do counts at those intersections. Depending on what the uses are going to be as well, that may trigger a broader, or I should say wider range of studies. So if you only do between 100 and 200 trips, you're only looking at immediate intersections. So you're probably looking at East and Sabatis, Russell and Sabatis, maybe a couple others. But when you get into a higher traffic generation, you have to look at more intersections then. The $7,500 is not going to come up with any mitigation measures. When somebody actually does a detailed analysis through development review, they come back and they're going to say, oh, you need a turning lane, you need a traffic signal, things of that nature. This is probably going to just say, yep, we know that there's congestion in this area and you probably could solve this by doing these things, but it's not going to have the specificity that a project would have if it went through a more detailed analysis. The second scope would get you that, and I think there would be even more duplication than between what the applicant actually provides and what the second scope provides. An applicant will certainly have more certainty with the second analysis, so if that's something the council wants to do to provide that higher level of certainty for any development out there, that is an option. But I think the first scope will at least pave the way for you to know what obstacles are going to present themselves.
Anything else, Councilor Jelinek?
Not yet, no.
So I guess my question, Director Hediger, so maybe this is a little too simplistic, but will the first option simply tell us, like, wow, you have a lot of traffic at this location?
Yeah, that might be oversimplifying.
Right,
but
yeah,
yes.
no, and I recognize that.
Yeah.
And we already know that even without any further development, there's already a lot of traffic at that location.
But how much worse will it be? So they'll take into consideration the counts that are there now. They'll increase them by a percentage. They'll look at it as though that, as I mentioned in there, they'll make a projection up to 199 trips, not knowing what the use may be, but they'll put that number into it, and they'll see, hey, what happens at these intersections? It's going to totally blow up. We know it's a problem now, and if you do this, there's going to be a lot more infrastructure improvement that's going to be needed. They're not going to necessarily tell us what that infrastructure improvements may be, but they can come up with some general recommendations with that.
Maybe this is too much of an open-ended question. So right now, as things stand with the current traffic, do we need to do, I guess I'm trying to figure out where we're going with this study, or what's the ultimate end result. Are we doing the study to figure out how to, what are the best uses for development of that property? Are we going to be, working on mitigating the current traffic that's there now? What is the end goal here?
That's a good question. I mean, the municipality may decide to do that depending on what the information we get back. We may find that regardless of any increase in traffic out there, we know that we have issues because of Farwell and parents picking up their kids out there, and that there's a need to improve striping or something, regardless of what that development does. We may find that things are okay out there, but if anything happens on this lot, there's going to be more issues. So if we're trying to be proactive as a community for a lot to be developed out there, we're doing a little bit of the legwork ahead of time. It's almost similar to what Mary Ann was just talking about as far as doing a study on Sabata Street and coming up with the ideas and recommendations, except we're doing it just in a very specific location for a specific lot.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we do the scope 1 and we decide that we want to go further with scope 2, will scope 2 still cost us a 16.5, or will part of that, the scope 1, mitigate the cost of scope 2?
That I'm not sure of. I mean,
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
find out. The way they had it is that it would build upon it, but I'm not sure if it's, an additional 16 on top of that.
So was it presented, just so I have it straight in my head, is it scope 1 or scope 2, or is it scope 1 and then scope 2?
One or the other.
One or the other?
Correct.
Okay, so there's a possibility that that if we decide to go with scope 2 to get a little more detail, there may be less cost than the 16.5 because we do scope 1?
I think the council is being asked to either fund $7,500 or $16,500.
Right.
And you're going to get everything that you got in scope 1 plus what the other items are in the second scope.
Okay, so 2 builds upon 1?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Hediger. As the person that really pushed to have this work done, the potential development at 128 Farwell Street is totally irrelevant as far as I'm concerned at this point, because we heard just an enormous amount of neighbors saying, we have a problem. We have a problem with traffic. And I wanted to see what kind of problem do we have. Doesn't matter if they build anything there, we have a problem. This first study is not going to put boots on the ground, as the director just said. They're not going to count cars. I think it's just throwing $7,500 out in the wind. I really think we should go with the more expensive one and address the need, or at least know what the deeper problem is, so we can address some of the needs of the neighborhood. We have to be looking at, you're right, Farwell in Sabatis, East Avenue in Sabatis, Farwell and Webster Street, that whole area. I think we need an in-depth study. We heard everybody complaining from Charles Street about the problem there. You have Meadowview that's right there. You have some development. I really believe that we need a deeper study just to answer questions from the neighborhood. And we know there's issues, and maybe once we have that study also, and Director Brenchick is talking about Sabata Street, and maybe there's some kind of commingling that we could do to address some of those issues on Sabatis and the dumping of traffic. I am not in favor of the smaller issue. I'm definitely in favor of the larger one. Regardless of any development, we have to look at it and know what we're talking about. And I don't feel we have that same ability from somebody in an office just looking at paperwork with no boots on the ground and not observing anything. So I would be in favor of going to option 2, the more expensive one, for the security of the neighborhood and to get answers. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, and thank you for that perspective, Councilor LaChapelle. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but that definitely reframes things. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, I think the requested action is really not a choice, the way it's phrased, or the way it's wordsmithed. So maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but I'm reading this as the requested action being the transfer of $7,500, not a choice of Scope 1 or Scope B. So, Administrator Hunter, I'm sorry.
The council can most definitely amend that.
Oh, okay.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. Director Hediger, was there a reason why staff recommended one of the scopes over the other?
Again, primarily because this is not something we've typically done in the past. The developer has taken on the burden of doing the traffic analysis here. As they've indicated, and I've mentioned in the memo here, this isn't necessarily to be replacing the developer's responsibility for an analysis. It'll certainly help, and again, there may be some duplication as mentioned earlier, but if we do Scope 2, yeah, more information is certainly going to be helpful to both the city and anybody who develops that property.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After listening to Councilor LaChapelle, I'd like to make a motion that we change this to be Scope 2 instead of Scope 1. Is that in order?
May I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor LaChapelle. Discussion on this new motion? Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say that I took to heart what the neighbors said about the traffic volumes on Farwell Street. In fact, I took it to heart so much that I don't travel Farwell Street anymore. I go around on East Avenue just out of respect to them. But there is a problem not caused by the development. It's a caused by poor follow-through on planning when they planned the bridge and the 4 lanes on Russell Street, and they were supposed to do that that bypass, and then by the time they got around to figuring out how to do it, it wasn't allowed because of the new environmental laws. So I think we owe it to that neighborhood to do what we can to get a handle on what the depth of the problem is, and possibly make some changes just now without taking into account any future development. So.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I would concur with my fellow councilors, and I would agree to the amendment. I think a larger study is needed. I think that's exactly what we heard, and I think that when we think about all the different roads in our community, we've got a lot of traffic issues throughout our community. I can think of several just off the top of my head. But that particular street, with the lack of space on there, the amount of traffic that's occurring during school hours in the morning and in the afternoon, alone, in my opinion, deserves a look. It's not like any of our other schools and the traffic that they receive. That is a pass-through. Everybody uses that. When you're on my side of town going to Councilor Clement's ward, that's the road most people take. Most people don't. They go right down Russell Street and right to that extension and right to Farwell Street, or vice versa. You're getting off the turnpike and you want to go to Upper Main Street. Where are you going to go? You're not going to go down Lisbon Street to Main Street. You cut across. That's the majority of folks do that, and so I think it's worthwhile doing the study. And let's think about it, $9,000 extra. We've just talked about we talk about large amounts of money. $9,000 to me seems it's well worth the look.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with everything that Councilor LaChapelle said, Councilor McCarthy said, even Councilor Scott had to say. Development on this particular lot notwithstanding, if it were to occur in the future, I don't see why we couldn't ask the developer to kick in some of the cost of this major study. And I think it's needed. As an old traffic division commander, that place is a nightmare. Certain times of day, it's even worse than a nightmare. And I can I can understand why people in the neighborhood are upset. So let's get some information as to what we can do to alleviate some problems. We know what the problems are. We know what we can do to further the problems, but let's find out if there's anything we can do to alleviate them. Thank you.
Yes, I agree here. You know, I want to avoid the city purchasing a study to find out something we already know. And if we're going to do a study, let's get a study that has, has a look at making some modifications or suggestions to alleviating the traffic issue. Councilor Scott?
Thank you.
Or Councilor Harriman?
So a couple questions. So you said that Scope 1 was recommended because we haven't typically done something of the level of Scope 2 in the past?
Correct.
And then to the mayor's point, I see under Scope 2, discussion of potential mitigation and resulting analysis, conceptual cost estimation. Would that be getting into the potential solutions to any issues they find?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, I'd like to go to public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure, and the vote before you is on the amendment, which again is changing the dollar amount from $7,500 to $16,500. Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Agenda item number 9.
And then we need to take a vote on the main motion, Mr. Mayor, as amended.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Main motion, it's now amended.
We voted on the amendment, now we're voting on the main motion.
Oh, no.
Wait.
Well, the main motion was 75, was.
No, that was-
say
It's been amended to 16.
So the amendment was to change from 75 to
Which we did.
16.5.
Okay.
And that amendment passed, so
Good.
now you need to vote on the whole motion,
There you go.
which is adopting the resolve
that'd
with
be
the
a
new
yes.
adjusted dollar amount. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor from Ward 7 is a yes. Counselor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
I'm glad you're here, Madam Clerk, thank you very much.
So am I.
Agenda item number 9 now.
Item number 9, resolve authorizing the acceptance and appropriation of a grant from Maine Housing for the purpose of funding a landlord liaison program. Requested action to approve the resolve authorizing the acceptance and appropriation of a grant from Maine Housing for the purpose of funding a landlord liaison program.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Councilor Jelinek, seconded by Councilor Harriman. Does administration or perhaps Assistant Director Parker wish to kick us off?
Good evening, councilors and Mr. Mayor. So city staff has been working with Maine Housing and other state agencies for a while now regarding supports for our unhoused population. And many of those issues have been before you over the past few months. The Maine Housing has reached out regarding some funding that they had available to support an idea that was expressed by city staff to pilot a project called the Landlord Liaison Pilot Project that was recently launched in Bangor to try to match unhoused residents with landlords that are willing to accept folks and providing some additional supports to assist them, whether that's through incentives to help improve their units and address issues that may be deemed a violation for Section 8 vouchers or general assistance vouchers to help address some of those issues, assisting with security deposits, as well as also risk mitigation funds. Often there's concern from landlords that should a tenant not work out, that there be additional costs in damages to the building that the security deposits don't cover, or helping with other issues. And so having some funding available should something come up, they have found to be helpful in alleviating concerns of landlords. As part of this also, we looked at some of the current work that was happening within the city, whether it's through our GA department or the police department with our Project Support You program and how to connect to the right people and provide some of the supports. We've also heard that, it's not just about finding, housing for people, but making sure there is support for those folks as well as the landlords during the initial stages of tenancy, helping residents understand lease requirements and what's expected of them, being a support for landlords should an issue arise, just generally checking in with clients throughout that first year just to make sure things are going well, that there's no issues, meeting with them regularly, meeting with them within their unit just to ensure that everything is going well and that they have the supports that they need. So there's this case management aspect that Tri-County has agreed to provide through this grant to add on to our Project Support You team. What we found through having conversations with them is that, our Project Support You staff that are out in the field right now, they provide one service. It's not specifically case management. They're usually connecting people to case management services. A lot of our service providers are really limited in case management staff, and often people are ending up on wait lists. We've also found that currently a lot of the case management staff that are funded through Main Care are limited in the services they can provide, and so having a funding source like the Maine Housing Funds help pilot this project gives them the flexibility to really do the work that is needed and not be bound by so many restrictions. So the proposal before you tonight is really to pilot a similar project to what they've been doing in Bangor here in Lewiston and try and adapt it and work with our landlords and our residents to try and figure out how best we can open up more units to be available for people that are looking for housing. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, I have one quick one here. So I looked in the pro forma, and there's $10,000 for grant administration. Is this grant going to be administrated by staff, or what is, and if so, is there time for that?
That is a great question. Yes, it would be, is a grant that would be received by the city, and so it would be administered through the city, and that would help offset staff time. We would be looking to leverage some of our existing resources within staff that may have time, and also works with some of their existing responsibilities to do that landlord outreach work.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I think this sounds like a great proposal to hopefully help help addressing our homelessness situation. So thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you. I don't have any questions per se, but I just want to applaud the city for bringing this resolve forward. I think it's very well done. I think what I like the most about it is just it really speaks to, something we spoke about earlier tonight in the workshop about siloing and really trying to get away from that and really looking at resources that we have in collaboration. Because as I looked at the points in this proposal and this resolve, the 6.1 talks about this intensive case management, but really these services that are already in place coming and wrapping around to create a greater impact. So again, I just want to applaud the staff that put this together. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a good approach. I like it, and I think we need to add one more leg to this. I see it as a three-prong approach. We have to, and to preface this, I have to say, as one of the largest landlords in the city at one time, one of the biggest fears is renting to some of these vouchers, because oftentimes the facilities get damaged heavily. It's not maintained. It's open door policy for everybody and their brother to come in and sleep there, and you have a problem. The fear was of trying to remove somebody from there and how long it takes and how much it destroys the facility. That's some of the fears of some of the landlords. So having a liaison between the two is great. I also think we need to work on a state level to start changing some of the rules that are so heavily laid against the landlords that you can't blame a landlord for saying, no, I don't want your voucher. No, I'm not going to take it, because you get burned too many times and you can't afford to be in business. The bottom line is the landlord needs to be in business to be able to make some money and maintain a facility so that it is there for somebody else later on. We have to take the needs of the landlords at the same time. So, yes, I support this. I also support moving forward, and I don't know if we can add it to it, but I think we can't change it in Lewiston, but we can be talking to our state representatives and sending up the chain to address the massive problem. If anybody goes to district court twice a month on, I think it's Wednesday mornings, there are hundreds of people in there, and sometimes it takes months, not kidding you, months to remove somebody from a facility. So, thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for reaching out for this grant. I think this is a great thing to have. When I look at, the last line here says, identify new strategies to help connect people to housing. One of the biggest conversations we've been having in our community over the last year is about the homeless situation and what we as a community can do. And we can't solve every issue, but this is definitely, in my opinion, a step in the right direction. When we look at, I appreciate that there's going to be a liaison to talk to the landlords, because I think that's extremely important that conversation happen with the landlords. But I also appreciate the fact that a significant amount of this funds is for building improvement funds and building security. The reality is that we don't have enough apartments out there, and this is going to secure some of those apartments that maybe just a little bit to go over the edge to have a place available for somebody that needs the services. We can send project support you people out and offer services, but if we don't have a place for these people to go, what's the use of that? It's almost like we're just, we're walking around in circles without actually having a place to put somebody that actually needs the help that's needed. And this, in my opinion, is putting us in the right direction to move forward with that. And I really appreciate you going for this. Thank you.
Public comment at this time? Back to the council. Thanks for your hard work on this, Director Parker.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 10.
Item number 10, approve the resolve to accompany the city's main community resilience partnership grant application, and if awarded, accept and appropriate the grant funds. Requested action, to approve the resolve to accompany the city's main community resilience partnership grant application, and if awarded, accept and appropriate the grant funds.
May I have a motion,
So
please?
moved.
Councillor Harriman,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Scott. Discussion? Councillor Clement.
When we first were made aware of this, Mr. Mayor, I think the question went forth in regards to this resolve, whether this was required to go along with the application, and if it was required, whether this was language that was provided by the Nature Conservancy, or is it something we drafted? And I noticed that the resolve that has come back to us has been distilled somewhat, and I don't have anywhere near as much heartburn with it as I did the first time, but I still have no answer to those questions, and I'm wondering if those could be asked.
If I'm understanding you correctly, what, from the resolve from last time, you're talking about the last meeting?
Yes.
How much of it was from the city and how much of it was from the Nature Conservancy?
No, I want to know where the resolve originated, whether it came from the Nature Conservancy, is it their wording presented to us originally? I see it's been distilled. And is it required that we approve this resolve in order to get grant, I guess is the title for this? I mean, I have no problem with the idea behind it, and most of the resolve now I can agree with, but those questions are still unanswered.
Is that something you'd like to speak to Administrator Hunter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The initial resolve had a combination of elements that included required language as well as sampled language. The sampled language included elements related to the Nature Conservancy, greenhouse effect, things like that. So they were just sample percentage statistics, things like that, that you could incorporate in your resolve if that's what your community chose to. Taking the feedback from the last meeting, we have presented a combination of some of those elements still, but really outlining where we would be using those funds. Some sort of resolve supporting the Nature Conservancy initiative with a greenhouse effect and climate change and so forth needs to accompany the application. So this is the resolve that would accompany the application.
Is everything in this resolve required by the Conservancy?
No. The Nature Conservancy left some latitude as far as what they wanted to do in their resolves.
I, for one, would like to see what the minimum requirements are, but I guess I really don't have any heartburn with this. The way these resolves and some of these things come forward, we're asked at the last minute, here, we need this from you to get this. And in every instance, somewhere buried in the weeds are a bunch of strings. I don't know if there's any strings in here or not. They're not plainly visible, but I'm kind of cautious as to what we put forth, as to what we accept and what we agree to, unless I know just where it's coming from. And in this case, if it's not required, I don't know why we're putting it in there.
I think it's to acknowledge, what the intention of the grant is, and that, in our community, particularly in the downtown area, we have a shortage of tree canopy. We have parks that do not have water fountains that are used by our downtown residents. It affords that opportunity to provide those infrastructure items without an in-kind match.
I don't deny that at all, but there are some things in here that go above and beyond that. But, like I say, I won't beat a horse. It's already dead, so I'll just move on. But in the future, I would appreciate, if we have something like this coming forward, I would like to know what is required of us, not what they'd like to see. As Grandma used to say, people in hell want ice water. And I don't want to be put in that position. I don't like it. And that's it, basically. Move on this one, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Councilor Harriman.
I just wanted to thank city staff for working on this, and the additional trees and water fountains will be greatly appreciated, I think. So, thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 11.
Item number 11, amendment to the traffic schedule to add no parking on both sides of Hammond Street from Main Street to High Street. Requested action to approve the amendment to the traffic schedule to add no parking on both sides of Hammond Street between Main Street and High Street.
So moved.
Second. Councilor P, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. Chief, would you like to kick us off?
This is a pretty simple amendment. Basically, what Hammond Street had for parking regulations were that you could only park on one side of the road in various spots from the intersection of Main and Hammond and all the way to High Street. What we're proposing, and for the reasons of the roads are rather narrow there, the way they're constructed, so Public Works had looked into or been asked, even by the hospital, if we could look at these parking ordinances and maybe make some changes due to the dangers, of them getting in and out of their property. Almost all of that street is CMMC property to some degree. Really not too many people park there. I think there used to be a acetylene place or, down the road, but that's been moved as well. Buses are having a difficult time turning, and I think the Director Brenchek just brought up that it was also part of the paving project, why we want to do this. So what it would do is just prohibit parking on both sides of the road, from Main Street all the way to High Street on Hammond.
Thank you, Chief St. Pierre. Discussion? Councilor Jelinas.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward, Chief. I'm in and out of that area a lot for my work, my day job, and it's the congestion. I think this is a great proposal, so thank you for bringing this forth.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So is there a need to remove the parking on both sides? If, I understand the reason with the issues with the bus. I was actually riding the bus the other day through there, and we had to stop and wait for somebody who was parking to move over far enough because there was just enough room once they parked. But wouldn't it be sufficient to remove the parking on one side rather than both?
That's how it currently was, is that there was parking only allowed on one side, and then various couple other spots that allowed parking, I think, on the opposite side as well. What this will do is provide a good passage for larger vehicles such as buses, and also assist with the paving project going forward.
Okay, and what will that space that's currently there, what will that be used for if it's not parking?
Travel lane?
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're saying the road will just widen at that point?
Correct, the road.
Yeah, right, yeah, okay. Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Counselor from Ward 7.
Yes. Yes.
Word 1.
Yes.
Word 2.
Yes.
Word 3.
Yes.
Word 4.
Yes.
Word 5.
Yes.
Word 6.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. We're now up to reports and updates. Councilor Clement.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, your MMA Legislative Policy Committee continues to meet. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 775 bills, I think, that are currently before our legislature. And the range of subject matter is phenomenal. Some of it ridiculous, some of it to the sublime, I guess. But we are continuing to work on that. I am with hopes to give you a rundown once we get things a little better organized. We currently meet once to twice a month for about 7.5 hours. And there are some really raucous conversations that go on in person at these meetings. And it's interesting to hear because there's a wide range of communities that are affected by this legislation. I mean, we're talking 200 to 300 up to 80,000 people, I guess. And it's interesting to hear the various viewpoints. But we are working, and so far I think we've prevented some things that would have directly affected us in an adverse way. With MMA is a very strong advocate for public policy before the legislature, and they represent their membership well. So hopefully, as we continue to win, we have about 2 more months of meetings, and we should come up with a final recommendation. A lot of these things are just getting out to committee. Like I say, this is a packet here that was presented at our last meeting. It's double-sided, and I think there's 762 bills contained therein. You mentioned the subject, I bet I could give you a bill that deals with it. So we're working on it, a lot of fun.
Further reports and updates? On to new business. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I just wanted to inform the council this evening that in our meeting this morning with the city administrator and the mayor, I brought up the conversation around some of our protocols that the police department has in regards to handling some of the panhandling, the loitering, and some of the homeless situations that we had. I have been fielding a exorbitant amount of questions lately with some of our downtown businesses in respect to some of the stuff that they are seeing, and I just thought that it was important that we bring this conversation up. There is a policy in place from the Office of the Attorney General of the state of Maine that asked for a policy by local police departments, and I thought it was important that we give our chief the opportunity to come speak to us and talk to us about what exactly our protocols are and inform our community what's happening. That's that. Thank you.
Thank you. For Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. I have 2 items. If you bear with me, Mr. Mayor. Media reports about the Martell School Senior Housing Project have shown, unfortunately, that political posturing is once again winning out over truth in Lewiston leadership. Shame on all who have chosen to participate in deliberate misportrayals of the Martell project, the City Council, and the Gendron family. Planning Board member and former City Councilor Mike Marcotte, who made the motion to recommend that the city renew its purchase option with Lewiston Housing, and was quoted in the paper saying not to extend them the option would be unconscionable, knows better than anyone else that the actual pivotal reasons for the council's decision were revealed and discussed during executive session, information that is not available to the public. Shame on you, Mr. Marcotte. Not only Mr. Marcotte, we have other planning board members that made comments before anything hit in front of them that they didn't like the idea that Mr. Gendron was a land banker, and they badmouthed one of our great families in our city. Lewiston Housing Authority's option was already extended 2, if not 3 times. The original plan was for 44 units and a lot of green space. This plan was brought back to the council and changed to allow almost triple the number of units with very little green space. The land was even offered to Lewiston Housing for free. My only request was for a large gathering space so that seniors could meet and play games and have parties. But I was told by Lewiston Housing, I don't know if we can make that work. Now Lewiston Housing comes back to the city with no timeline and no money to move the project forward, but still wants us to hold on to the property for them. The only other bidder on the project was ready to start within the next 2 months. Now it goes to the planning board for recommendation to sell the property, and the political theater begins. Mr. Gendron learns about the delays and confirmed his offer to rehab the site. He wanted to turn that property into a mixed use, building at least the original 44 senior housing units, along with either retail or a restaurant. The mayor's letter to the planning board was quoted in the paper saying, there has been no valid reason provided either stated publicly or executive session that would warrant the drastic actions of selling the property to a different buyer. Also quoted, the city of Lewiston is not served by the current council changing direction in this manner. Oh, really, Mr. Mayor? If that is the case, maybe you can explain why the views and votes you put forth during executive session are completely different from the positions you have put forth in public. Shame on you, Mr. Mayor, and shame on you for again trying to throw this current council under the bus. Mr. Kilmurray, shame on you for playing on the fears of the senior citizens. You also have said one thing in executive session and another in public that makes Lewiston Housing look like the savior. Why do we in this city take great pride in tearing down the names and reputations of our own homegrown Lewistonians? Shame on all of us. Please name me one person or family that has done more for Lewiston in the past 60 years than the Gendron family. 3 generations. Whenever there is a problem or we need help, we always ask the Gendrons for help. They have given millions of dollars to the city. Let's just list a few projects. St. Mary's Hospital, the YWCA, the Lights of the Basilica, Holy Cross Church, the Franco Center, the charter school in Lewiston run by and sponsored by the Gendrons. If it wasn't for John Gendron, the new 70,000 square foot F.W. Webb building would not have been built in Lewiston. Dave Gendron is also the largest property owner in the city, which means he pays more taxes than anybody else. I, for one, am tired of hearing all the negative comments against not only the Gendrons, but also the St. Lawrence, the Platts, the Rancourts, the Heberts, the Scalars. These families do a lot for our city. Now, I'm not saying that they're all saints. They are human, they make mistakes. But how about we try to thank them instead of chastising them? You all received a letter from Mr. Gendron, and I think it needs to be read in public. Gendron Realty property directed to Heather Hunter. Please be advised that Gendron Realty LLC hereby withdraws its offer to purchase and develop the real estate location at 860 Lisbon Street, Lewiston, Maine, Martell School. The statements from the city's planning board, which were made at its meeting on February 12th, demonstrates a profound lack of respect for what the Gendron family has provided to the city. It also demonstrates a shocking lack of knowledge of how difficult sites like Martell School are to develop. The Gendron family has been developing the city since the early 1970s. It was instrumental in making the Walmart distribution center come to life. It has developed Exit 80, brought FedEx distribution and Estes trucking to Lewiston, developed Gendron Drive, and added millions of dollars in tax base to the city's coffers. I myself have spent and continue to spend millions of dollars in developing 855 Lisbon Street, 1035 Lisbon Street, and 1775 Lisbon Street. The Gendron family is responsible for contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars to local charities, including the YWCA, the Franco-American Center, the Academy. It is troubling to see how the city's own planning board dismisses this as, "What have you done for us lately?" As one of Lewiston's largest taxpayers, I take issue with how the Martell School negotiations have unfolded. My time and resources are, like all things in life, finite. Developers who are willing to take on the Martell School project are far and few in between. If the city has no interest in partnering on this transaction, I will focus my time and resources elsewhere. Signed, Dave Gendron. Mr. Gendron sat down with another town in the state of Maine, and was greeted with warm arms and said, "What can we do to help you, Mr. Gendron, develop in our community? How can we change the laws, the zonings? How can we make it work so you can develop in our community?" That's the attitude that we need to have. And I'm just so disheartened by just this bickering. We had people from the Senior Housing Committee going around, and I don't want to say from the committee, some seniors just going around bad-mouthing the Gendrons. And Luke Jensen said it right. We have to stop. This is a mentality. We have to stop this. I feel bad for the Gendron family and all the other families that try to do something in Lewiston. This is a systemic problem, and we have to change. Thank you for item number 1. Unless somebody wants to comment on this, I have something else to review.
Sorry, just to be clear, Councillor LaChapelle, are you taking comments on what you said thus far?
Certainly.
Or?
If somebody would like to comment on that, I'd be open,
Okay.
whatever.
Councillor Scott? I apologize. It's been a problem this evening. Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. I just wanted two things. One thing, I would caution members of the council about releasing information that was discussed in executive session that's not public. And second, if there was a proposal from Mr. Gendron for the at least 44 units plus retail that was mentioned, that was not presented to the entire council because I have not seen that, just for the public's benefit. Thank you.
Councillor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would take issue with Councillor Harriman's statement. Those issues that occur in executive session can be made public by majority vote of this council. And perhaps we need to do that, because I also, and I'm upset with people wandering all over town, bad-mouthing this body when they don't have a clue as to what goes on half of the time. I know I received a number of telephone calls from seniors. I'm all for, I was on the original council that dealt with this issue with the Vesta Housing and Lewiston Housing. There have been many, many changes, most of which the general public knows nothing about, yet they continue to bloviate and make comments and find fault with what we do. I can't help but think that Councilor LaChapelle has hit the nail right on the head with his comments. And I, for one, I don't know the Gendron family. I know of them. I've heard a lot of ill will played out in the last 3 weeks against them, and none of it, in my estimation, justified. And I think, for one, that we ought to have a majority of this council sit down and decide what we're going to release for what has been said in executive session and put these people on notice that they're wrong. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinek, did you have something?
I just wanted to say that, a few weeks ago, I made a request. I mean, there's been a lot of information around that property, some of which has started in 2019 and has just, progressed through the years. And some of it, yes, in executive session, some of it here, some of it by planning board, some of it by us. It's just been a lot, and it's, and the pathway, if you will, has become very convoluted. So I made a request that we get, just some information about the whole period of time and what has transpired, because I think between all of the different venues that we've been in, media stuff that's come out, different sides that we've heard, I have asked the administrator to provide us, before we really make any decisions, with some accurate information about what's actually transpired. Because for myself, this isn't about taking sides. It's about really hearing some truths, because it starts getting a little bit murky. It starts getting like, did I read that? Did someone tell me that? Did that happen here? Was that a rumor? And it's just, I personally feel like this particular topic has gotten so out of control. Listen, I grew up down the street from the Gendron family. This isn't about like me not liking Mr. Gendron or not. It's really about understanding the property. I just want to understand what went down, because we've heard pieces, and it doesn't feel linear to me anymore. It doesn't really feel like I have accurate information. So I'm looking forward to getting that prior to the March, is it not 7th? Yeah, prior to the March 7th meeting. I just wanted to share that with the public so they know that's what we're waiting on.
Administrator Hunter, did you have something to add?
Certainly, the timeline has been drafted. One of the second part of your request is to have Lewiston Housing Authority fact-checked it. They were not able to do it in a time for this meeting, so it would be at the next meeting.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Councilor Scott.
So I would agree that this conversation, I think, goes a little bit beyond just the particular Martell School conversation. There were discussions that were had in executive session. And, there is a rule that we can vote to say that we're going to speak about what was in executive session by majority of the council. I think part of the situation here, and something that was also brought up by Mr. Jensen tonight, was no understanding about what we voted on and assigned our names to last meeting. And when we look at that, one of the things we're looking at is that we ensure that the work of the council is coordinated, especially in major issues of importance to the community, and that sound lines of communication are in place within the council. That is actually, by practice, what the mayor should be doing. Now, this is really difficult, because I got to be honest, I think that there was phenomenal work being done by our mayor in our community, and as far as outreach with the community members. And there are a lot of people that very much like the mayor. But what's being misunderstood here, and what can't be discussed because it's discussed in executive session, is that when the mayor goes to the newspaper and says, or sends a letter to the planning board after they'd been in the meeting with us, all of us, and all of the council agreed at a meeting on how we were moving forward, it is an undermining of the council by the mayor to do such a thing. It made us all look bad, in my opinion. It was called out by planning board members, the shame on the council. It was said in the newspaper, and it has been all over the community, and I too am getting phone calls from from seniors in our community. And I will tell you, I was on the planning board when that original project came forward. I pushed wholeheartedly for a green space. I pushed wholeheartedly for a path through that green space so that our new senior housing was going to have a path directly to the Shaw's supermarket, and that our seniors weren't going to have to walk on the sidewalk until we were able to make sure and ensure that there was safety in our sidewalks with that new facility. I was 100% behind that. But it looks like we weren't all behind that, and it's convoluted now, and it's out there in the public, convoluted. And to be honest with you, one of the things that we're supposed to be doing when we vote for something, we do not go out behind the backs of the others and undermine the folks that voted for it. We may not agree. There have been many things that I have not agreed with this council, but I will not go out there and say, oh, so-and-so did. We have to support it. That's the rules. That's part of our protocols. That is the reason why we had that conversation and we signed that paper. And to me, none of that was followed through a week later when I read in the paper and I watched the planning board meeting and I read and I heard what the chair said was the mayor's letter. It makes it extremely difficult for me because, again, you know, the mayor can fill this room. You can fill this room when you want to, and you are a great mayor advocating. The photos that you take, the advocacy that you do for our community, the advocacy that you do for our businesses is great. But you can't undermine the council and not fill us in when you are thinking of things or doing things. I feel very undermined by that, and I'm not comfortable with that situation. I'm having a hard time with this. I really am, because I work very hard to try to ensure and speak for everybody on this council. I try to be the person in the middle and it's going to see all sides. But I'm having a very hard time with all of this. I'm going to be very frank, a very hard time. That's all I have to say.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a couple of things that I want to address. One, in general, I think the general public needs to know that as a council as a whole, we were very disappointed in the lack of moving forward by the Lewiston Housing Authority and the possibility of losing senior housing on that property. We were all gung-ho for senior housing. We thought it was a great idea. I don't want to go into details, but there was changes that were requested that was going to enhance the project. We were all for it, and we were very disappointed when Lewiston Housing failed to follow through on that. One of the biggest failures is the building is still standing. It's still a hazard. It needs to go. And because of their dragging their feet and not being able to move forward with the project, that hazard is still there. I know our insurance carriers are upset about the building still being there. I know the last thing we want is kids to break in there and someone to get hurt. That's a very real possibility. So these are things that people need to understand what went behind, in general, our feeling for why we did what we did. The other thing is alluding to what Linda said, is I was very upset and very disappointed to read the comments in the paper about the planning board meeting and what the mayor had to say about the council and how he was very disappointed in the council, where he was in the same room with us, he heard the same information, and he agreed with all of us. So to have him come out in public and throw us under the bus is a load of bull. And it just continues the idea that he can say anything he wants, whichever way it goes, and he doesn't care about the council, he doesn't care about the public perception of the council, and he plays the council as uncaring. And that's so far from the truth. Every council member on this dais is very caring about the public that we serve, and to say otherwise is wrong. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle, did you have something else?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I titled this, Lewiston, Do You Know? After requesting information from the city administrator in regards to our explosion in welfare requests, the following was reported. All councilors have received a copy. As of 1/31/23, we have spent $481,299 for assistance compared to 1/31/22 of $254,290. The city budgeted $576,650, 70% reimbursement rate of $403,655, net impact on taxpayers $172,995. If this continues, the city is estimating the annual cost to be $833,000, less reimbursement from the state and ARPA funds from the state of Maine. Thank God, which will not have much of a financial impact on our city. But remember, state money and ARPA money funds come from state taxes. We still pay it. Asylum seekers intake, AKA illegal aliens, from 7/1/21 to 6/30/22, 92 cases, 193 individuals, 27 families, 43 singles. From 7/1/22 to 2/9/23, 139 cases, 317 individuals, 70 families, 69 singles. The last 3 months, 70 cases, 142 individuals, 27 families, 43 singles. By state law, we are unable to stop this rush of people coming to the state and Lewiston. This has a very profound impact on all of our services, from medical care, food, schools, and of course, housing. Ask yourself why it takes 5 hours in the waiting room at our local hospital before you even see a doctor. The wide open border issue just doesn't affect the southern states. It affects us here in Lewiston. The former mayor of Portland a few years ago stated that, send them to Portland. Now Portland is in critical condition and cannot afford to continue with that open door policy. So what Portland Housing has done is form a group called Quality Housing Coalition. The primary goal of this group is to find housing for as many people they can throughout the state of Maine. Meaning, they would send people to live in places like Lewiston and pay for the first month of rent and then stop. Now it becomes Lewiston problems, and we must pick up the long-term tab for them. Last week, Victoria Morales, Executive Director of Quality Housing Coalition, contacted Mayor Shalene and asked for a letter of support for their program, stating that it would not cost the city any money. I feel compelled to read this letter at this time. This is on official city letterhead dated February 10th. Dear Mrs. Morales, on behalf of the City of Lewiston, I am delighted to voice our support for the Quality Housing Coalition's Project Home Partnership proposal for funding through TD Bank's Housing for Everyone Grant program. The Project Home Partnership will expand on QHC's successful approach to preventing evictions and building landlord and social services partners that increase access and safe, stable housing for those in need. In May of 2021, the City of Lewiston and the Lewiston Housing Authority was awarded a $30 million U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Choice Neighborhoods Initiative grant to revitalize the Tree Street neighborhoods of downtown Lewiston through the city's Growing Our Tree Streets transformation plan. We are dedicated to improving the quality of our housing stock and ensure Lewiston residents have affordable housing opportunities. This year, the City of Lewiston's General Assistance Director, Elaine Brackett, has been working closely with Project Home to ensure that low-income tenants have the rental support they need to stay stable housed. QHC offers the opportunity to create strong partnerships with Lewiston landlords to remove barriers to housing, to accept all forms of housing vouchers and subsidies by providing housing stabilization services, financial guarantees, and risk mitigation funds. The City of Lewiston is encouraged by the fact that QHC housed 250 households in 5 counties in 2022, all of whom would have been screened out of the traditional application process. It is not lost on us that 250 homes is equivalent to building 5 low-income housing tax credit projects just in 1 year. Thank you for the opportunity to partner with QHC on this project. Sincerely, Carl L. Shalene, Mayor of the City of Lewiston. The Portland nonprofit QHC, which Mayor Shalene aims to enter into an agreement with on behalf of the cities of Lewiston, is targeting Lewiston and other communities to position itself as a broker between landlords and potential tenants. This nonprofit, remember, an arm of Portland Housing, is merely looking to poach more of the housing stock we don't have for those already living here by adding their own clients and interests to our pre-existing, ever-lengthening waiting list for housing. The wrongness of outside middlemen coming into our community to further destabilize our precarious, low-income, affordable housing situation cannot be overstated. Now, the other issue is Mayor Shalene broke the rules of conduct we all signed just 2 weeks ago. The continuation of his inability to follow rules is evidence. He is in violation of our city charter, section 2.03 and 3.05. Also, council protocols, duties of the mayor. This is a continuing problem. The mayor refuses to follow the guidelines set forth for the office he holds. At this point, I move we as a council censure Mayor Shalene for violation of our rules of conduct in the form of a motion.
I make that motion.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we make a motion at this time, or do we need to first suspend the rules?
We would typically suspend the rules before making a motion at this time because this item is not on the pre-printed agenda and the public hasn't been notified about this item in advance.
So I move that we suspend the rules immediately.
I'll second that motion.
And then, yeah, so it's been motioned and then seconded. So is there now discussion about suspending the rules, or do we proceed to an immediate vote?
No, there'd be discussion on suspending the rules, and I will remind you that it would take a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules.
No, ma'am, it takes a majority.
It's a
vote by
majority,
council rules.
not to suspend?
I think it,
Council rules.
Okay.
I do think it's just a majority.
Okay.
A simple majority.
Okay.
Discussion on suspending the rules. Councilor Clement?
I think this is an issue that needs to be discussed by the council, so therefore, I think we need to suspend the rules so that we can do it. And if we need to suspend the rules in regarding executive session, then I'm prepared to do that at any time. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I guess I'm still unclear as to what the issue is that we would suspend the rules for. I didn't understand the statement, I guess.
Sure, I apologize, Counselor. It would be to suspend the rules and to add an item to the agenda this evening for action. Sorry, I didn't complete that comment. Thank you, Counselor.
I guess my point is I don't understand what the item would be added that we would be suspending the rules to take up. Like what?
Censure the mayor.
To censure the mayor.
But for what?
That has no relevance on the motion to suspend the rules.
But aren't we suspending the rules?
We're going to discuss that when we get to the censure, when we get to the next issue.
But what's the censure for?
Motion to move the vote.
Do we,
The motion to move.
and that is, we have seconded, so Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure, so there's, just for clarification, there's been a motion by, Counselor LaChapelle, seconded by Counselor Clement, to move the question, which would then go for an immediate vote. If you could just give me a second to get some paper. Here we go. So this would be to move the vote and then go for the immediate vote on the suspension of the rules. So motion to move the previous question, Counselor Ward 7,
No.
Ward 1.
To move the question for suspending the rules?
To move the question for suspending the rules, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Counselor from Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
No.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 5 to 2. So now the motion immediately pending before you is to suspend the rules of the city council and to add an item for action this evening. You all set for a
So
vote?
that was a question to move the vote, and now we are currently voting to suspend the rules.
That's the motion before you, is to suspend the rules, because you stopped the discussion on the suspend the rules and moved for an immediate action on that, which was the motion to move the previous question.
Right.
Basically stop debate and go right for a vote. That motion passed, move the previous question, passed by a vote of 5 to 2. So now the motion immediately before you is to suspend the rules and to add an item for action to this evening's agenda.
Please proceed, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor from Ward 7,
No.
Ward 1,
No.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
No.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 3. So the motion to suspend the rules has been passed, and then it would be open for a motion to come up again, whatever action the council would like to take.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we censure the mayor for violation of our rules of conduct.
So we have, it has been motioned, and then we have a second.
Yes, I believe Counselor LaChapelle and Counselor Pease.
Yeah, sorry, Councilor LaChapelle, seconded by Councilor Pease.
Yes, thank you.
Discussion at the council. Councilor Jelinas.
I'd just like to seek some clarification. The letter that Councilor LaChapelle read, was that letter sent? Who would I, Administrator Hunter, could you, addressing my questions, do I suspect?
No, the letter was not sent.
Was that letter made available to the entire council?
I made it available to the entire council.
The letter that was read this evening?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Scott, or I apologize, Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I guess I would just ask for clarification as to what the motion is for, what the censure is for. What, typically there's a behavior that you need to censure someone for. So I just wonder what that behavior, what that is.
I have a chance to respond to it. Thank you. As I stated before, let me just get the exact, repeat it again. In our city charter, sections 2.03 and 3.05, also council protocols, duties of the mayor. In no place does this mayor have the authority to quote on behalf of the city of Lewiston. He does not have the authority to speak on behalf of the city of Lewiston unless the council votes to give him that authority to speak on that. He does have the authority to speak as mayor of the city of Lewiston. He can make any mayoral comments he wants, and that's within his preview, just like the letter that came out today, which was 100% in his realm. He does not have the authority to speak on behalf of the city of Lewiston. And there was another, the opportunity to partner with QHC. He does not have I'm answering your question, I'm sorry. He does not have the authority to enter into any partnership with anybody at any time. The council does. If that answered your question, sir.
Yes, I'm just curious when he did that. Like when, what action are you talking about?
In formulating that letter, if that wasn't stopped, that would have been sent out. If that wasn't stopped, that would have been sent out.
I
He
believe
had
that
no
was
authority to write that letter. It was stopped before it was sent. And committing the city of Lewiston to resources, again, he does not have that authority.
I guess my question is, I thought that was a draft that was circulated to
Oh, I was
us.
hoping you were going to say drafts. I was looking forward to it. I so remember you absolutely crucifying two other counselors on this staff for a draft resolution. You absolutely went berserk on it. So again, isn't it interesting how it's two sides? You can choose which ones you want. There was a draft that was worked on once upon a time that you so eloquently brought to speech in the council chambers that was being worked on. Wasn't on city council letterhead. We did not violate it, but it's just really strange that you can now switch sides that quickly.
I'm just wondering what the action is that the censure is for.
It speaks for itself.
I'm just not seeing the mayor speaking on behalf of the city.
Then vote no, Scott. You're going to vote no regardless.
Councilors,
I'm just
thank
trying to understand the motion on the table, and there needs to be an action to censure somebody for. So where did the mayor take the action that you are describing?
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you,
I'm good.
Councilor LaChapelle, you were good at this point. Councilor Clement.
I will add to what Councilor LaChapelle had to say on this. Our charter, section 3.05, as I recall, non-interference. In this instance, the mayor went to city staff and asked them to prepare this letter. He handed them, from what I understand, was some boilerplate from this outfit in Portland that said that wouldn't cost us a dime, which is an absolute fabrication, and he asked them to prepare this. We found out about this, and the letter was quashed before it got sent because there was no authority to bind us. And probably it would have saved, in that instance, it would have saved the mayor some face. Had it gone forward, this would have been a much more convoluted situation than we're faced with tonight. If you read, Councilor, Section 2.03 of the Charter, if you also look at our council protocols, duties of the mayor, the only time the mayor can speak on behalf of the city of Lewiston or behalf of the city council is upon a binding vote from the council. A 4-3 vote binds this council. If you're on the losing side of that vote, you agree. You shut up and move on. That's basically it, in as plain a language as I can provide. And I think that Councilor LaChapelle has laid it out succinctly.
Okay. Councilor Peace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this proclamation that went around and everybody signed it, after what I've been reading in the papers and seeing what's going on, this is what it means to me. Nothing. If you're not going to stick by it, don't sign it, don't write it up, don't bring it to the council. You know, comments like the one you made in the paper, that the developers, the city of Lewiston is not served by the current council changing directions in its manner. This is that's why we can't have developers in here? That's your opinion? I just was disgusted when I read it. Thank you.
Did you have something else, Councilor Jelinas?
Yes, just quickly, I personally can't support this because I feel like we're putting forth censoring something that wasn't done. In terms of the concern expressed, I mean, yeah, there was a draft, and, you know, I think all of us as elected officials have made mistakes, and we've done some drafts, and you're right, it goes both ways. I agree with that. And you know, you're absolutely right. But I also feel like I have never felt, I mean, I will say that I believe that Mayor Schleen has gone public and made comments as a mayor. I've never felt, with the exception of this draft, that he was representing the council as a whole. So, I mean, is he representing himself as a mayor and saying what he feels? Yes, you've done that. Absolutely, you've done that. I personally don't have a problem with that. I have never felt that we're being served by a mayor who doesn't care about the council. That's just not been my experience. I've also not felt that the mayor has spoken for me about something that I don't, you know, that I haven't said. I mean, I've seen your comments. So if I'm being really specific, I can't really support this because it's not legitimate to me. Those are my comments.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So I, for one, I agreed with the agreement that we made, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, that Councilor Pease tore up. I thought that we had come to an agreement about things, but I guess it seems that not everybody feels that way. To the point of the charter sections 2.03 and 3.05, I'm not seeing the language in there that was given. 2.03 talks about the mayor, and 3.05 is non-interference. And I'm just not seeing anything in there that pertains to this particular issue. I'm still not seeing the connection between what action was taken. Seems like there was no action taken, and the charter. I just don't see, it seems like these sections were just sort of picked out and they don't seem to relate to the matter at hand here. So I'm just still confused about what we're even voting on.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So to censure somebody is a pretty serious thing to do. And I had hoped that a couple of weeks ago when we had conversations that things would be worked out and that we were able to work a little better. I got to be honest with you, I find this a bit embarrassing that we are at this level now as a council and as a mayor that we just can't seem to get past some of this stuff. I don't quite really know how to fathom it, to be honest with you. I made my statement about what I felt about what was said in the paper about Martell School. I do have concerns about that. I don't appreciate when somebody, if there was an issue with that, why it wasn't stated earlier, but when it's a time to say something in public, all of a sudden that's being said. That makes me extremely uncomfortable. And I hope that you would understand that and we can have further conversation on that and you could understand. But I don't think that at this point, because I do believe that censure is very serious, that I can support censuring. I understand where the points are coming from. I also agree that I think both are, that there was drafts made on both sides, but I would prefer that we were able to work this out without going to that extreme level. That's where I stand, and that's just where I have to be at this point.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my opinion is why we can't continue to do this. We signed that proclamation, and we all agreed to it, right? And then you turn around and go and do it again, right after? If you don't censure somebody for doing that, what's the sense of even having it? Why bother? Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was 2 weeks ago that we signed this proclamation, and it didn't last 2 weeks. We've had conversations along the same general line ever since January of last year, and nothing ever seems to happen. I'm not going to go into the language of the charter. The language is specific in this particular instance. The non-interference clause, somebody asked city staff to do something directly, and they don't have the authority to do that. The only direction that can be given to city staff is through our administrator, period. Okay? That's all I'm going to say there. I can support a resolution of censure because nothing else has seemed to work. And if this doesn't work, then I suspect that we'll have to, I don't know what we'll try next. Something has got to break here. Something has got to give. I want to work as a body, but I don't appreciate people going out and making comments in public. Had a member of the planning board indicate something to me over the weekend, and I believe that same member of the planning board kind of threatened one of our councilors with a comment they made about the Martell School thing. And these people do not know what's going on. I mean, In the instance of the discussion about the planning board, the mayor's letter to the planning board, the mayor certainly knew what was going on, or should have known, because we discussed it amply. But then he comes out, and I don't know whether we're sampling political wins or what we're doing, but I, for one, am fed up with it, and I will vote for a resolution of censure. I thank you.
At this point, I'd like to, have we been to public comment, Madam Clerk, for this?
We have not, no, sir.
I realize we have a limited audience, but we are now heading to public comment for this. And now we're back to the council. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I take this act very, very seriously, censoring someone. And if this was the only situations that Councilor LaChapelle had talked about, if those were the only things that had happened, there's no way in the world I would have even suspended the rules to entertain a motion to censor the mayor. But we've dealt with it in 3 executive sessions, and it hasn't changed his opinion on what he can say and what he can do. What's the next step? The next step has to be censoring him, because discussing anything in executive session, coming to agreements, signing agreements so that we would all work under the same protocols, and then a week later just, hey, doesn't apply to me, I can do anything I want. So for this being his minimally 4th time of major situations, I'm definitely going to support censoring him. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. A couple things I'd still like clarification on what action we are talking about here. What is the issue at hand for censuring? Also, what is the authority, where's the authority for censuring someone? On that point, I'm just curious as to where that authority lies. If anyone could please answer those.
So there's been a lot here this evening, and I'll simply say that, based on feedback that I received, I withdrew the draft letter and it was never sent out. Further discussion from the council. Councilor Harriman, did you have something else to add? I guess I would just make it a formal point of order as to the authority to censure a member of the body, where that lies. Madam Clerk, are you looking that up, or?
The process to censure councilor is addressed in Robert's Rules of Order. It is in a disciplinary action section of Robert's Rules of Order. The process for censure, the procedures for censure, it's a main motion, it needs a second, it's debatable, it's amendable, usually brought up under new business. It takes a majority to adopt.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Clement, did you have something?
No, I was just going to bring up what Madam Clerk so amply and efficiently provided. It is Robert's Rules, and it is a disciplinary procedure authorized by such, and we've taken it up in the proper format. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7? No. Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Not knowing what we're voting on, I'll have to vote no.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 4-3.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other new business before the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Clement.
I would ask, if I might, Councilor LaChapelle, if he would like to have a resolution of censure prepared and read into the record at our next meeting.
Is the question, is that I don't know the procedure at this point. Is that normal, or what would be the procedure for?
I don't know the full procedure offhand either. We can do some research for you to answer your question. Robert's Rules of Order is pretty thin
regarding censuring.
I think that for the viewing public that have just watched this, I'm sure this is going to blow up, and everybody will hear about this. So, if you can get back to me, what is the proper protocol?
Sure. The city administrator will touch base with the city attorney. We'll get back to you.
Thank you.
I think it could go either way, Councilor LaChapelle. It could be a recording of this vote here tonight if you wish to further set forth the grounds for it in a formal resolution of censure. It could go either way. The vote has been taken, censure action has been taken, and if you want to expound upon that, that's basically something that can be done, doesn't need to be done, I don't think, at this point.
Thank you.
Councilor Pease, did you have something else to add?
Yes, I'd like to make sure that it is recorded and, thank you.
Without further new business, I believe we're heading to executive session. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. To enter into an executive session pursuant to Maine Revised Statutes Annotated Title I, Section 4056C, to discuss real estate negotiations of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Pease. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and good night, Lewiston.
Brief recess?
Yeah.